Chapter 338. The room must be taken, the forest must be taken, the car must be taken, the plane must be taken, the yacht must be taken, the swimming pool must be taken, the beach must be taken, the plane must be taken, the yacht must be taken, the swimming pool must be taken, the beach must be taken, the winery must be taken. Looking at the photos in her mobile phone, Feng Yunshan helplessly patted her forehead. After following Jiang Hai around his manor, the three returned to Jiang Hai's villa. Ever since they could speak, Delina and Marian hardly stayed at home during the day. They would run all over the place, go out to play, go help Aphrodite, go play in the vegetable fields, or take care of Jiang Hai's chickens and wyverns. Naturally, most of the time, they would go pick up eggs and the like. They were playing, but they were also helping Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai knew what they were thinking, so he didn't stop them. They could do whatever they wanted. In any case, it wasn't tiring or dangerous. So at this time, there were only 3 people in the villa, Jiang Hai and Marian. After a rich lunch, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi returned to the room to choose which clothes to go with these places. As for Jiang Hai, he was still downstairs watching TV. To be honest, she was quite satisfied with Jiang Hai's villa. Generally speaking, models like them mainly took photos one by one. If they went to the beach, they would take the beach, and at most, they would add the clothes in the hotel. If they took photos of a luxury car, they would take photos of a winery, and they would take photos of a swimming pool. It was not like Jiang Hai's villa, where everything was available. This time, although Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi brought a lot of big boxes, in fact, they only brought a total of 28 sets of clothes, including bikinis and other things. They also gave Delina and Marian 1 set each, so there were 26 sets left, which was 13 sets each. For a photo shoot like this, even if they came together, it was impossible for them to wear the same clothes. Because the two had different styles, they would naturally wear different clothes. These photos were taken in different styles, so naturally, the clothes would be different too. Of course, the clothes had to be very simple, revealing a large amount of flesh. This was inevitable. However, the color of the clothes was mainly white and black. This was more compatible with the cold and aloof style. She was a queen. She was a royal sister. She was a royal sister. She was a royal sister. Ai Xiaoxi, on the other hand, was more of a youthful style. Her main goal was to act cute and adorable. Although her clothes were also very simple, most of them were cyan, sky blue, and pink. She even had some plush accessories. If they wore mixed clothes, regardless of whether they were willing or not, at least their aura was not right. If that was the case, then these clothes really weren't enough. The room, the car, the plane, the winery, the pool, the beach, the yacht, the forest, there were 8 places to be photographed. If 2 sets for each place were not enough, it was really a happy problem. Originally, she thought that the clothes she brought were enough, and it was enough for her to look up to Jiang Hai, but she didn't expect that she still underestimated him. Otherwise, we can only take 1 set for some places, like the winery. Since we don't take photos on the ground, we can take 1 set on the ground, and also in the forest. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, although Feng Yunshan was the main leader this time, and all the arrangements had to be listened to, Ai Xiaoxi still put forward her own opinion because she also felt that there were too many things here. 1 set for the winery is enough, but how can 1 set for the room be enough? A bathtub, a bed, and a window, at least 3 sets. Yachts and planes, these are almost impossible to get in the country. I feel that 3 sets in 1 place is too little. There are already 9 sets. The remaining 2 sets in the pool, 2 sets in the forest, and there are still some in the car. No matter how I count it, it's not enough. Scratching her head, Feng Yunshan said helplessly. As she spoke, her eyes suddenly lit up. In fact, it is almost enough. On the bed in the room, we can block the important places and not wear it. This way, we can save 1 set. We can also save 1 set for the swimming pool, and in the forest, on the plane, and on the yacht. This way, we can save 5 sets. It is almost enough. Suddenly, Feng Yunshan's eyes lit up, and she said with excitement. How can this be? Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, AI Xiaoxi knew that she was not joking. She really wanted to do this. Although she had seen people take photos like this before, to be honest, almost no one would take photos like this except for some low-level models who really wanted to become famous. Even if it was a photo shoot, it would require the crew to be female. After all, it was very embarrassing to pose like this in front of some men. Not all women in this industry were very open. Since AI Xiaoxi came, she naturally knew that Jiang Hai would also participate in the shoot. After all, only the two of them came. When one person took photos for another person, even if they did their own makeup, they still needed some lighting, or help to carry something, or give the wind, etc. Jiang Hai participated in the shoot as such person. In the photos, indeed, she did not show anything in the end, but Jiang Hai here saw it clearly. This is work. What's wrong with it? It's settled. Looking at AI Xiaoxi's blushing face, Feng Yunshan did not care. She clapped her hands and made the decision happily, not giving AI Xiaoxi a chance to resist. Then she ran out of the room directly and went downstairs to find Jiang Hai. Because there were many places to shoot, their visa was only signed for 10 days. Now it was the second day, so everything had to be done quickly. Sister Chen. Seeing Feng Yunshan leave in a hurry, AI Xiaoxi's whole body was in a bad mood. It was not easy for her to forget the scene last night, but at this time, she began to recall it in her mind unconsciously. What should I do now? Although she had been mentally prepared, when this moment came, AI Xiaoxi was still very conflicted. But before she could think of a way, Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan's footsteps came from the other side. We decided to shoot inside the room first. You are responsible for lighting and doing chores. After walking into the room, Feng Yunshan said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai, who had nothing to do anyway, nodded. It doesn't matter, but you also have to tell me how to do it. This was promised early on, so Jiang Hai didn't care. Okay, just listen to my arrangements in a while. I will go and change clothes first. After talking to Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshan took a set of clothes and went into the bathroom next to her. Only Jiang Hai and AI Xiaoxi, who was still adjusting the camera, were left in the room. Ugh, I haven't helped with this thing before. If there is anything wrong, remember to tell me. At this time, it was really awkward for the two of them to stay here. Especially after the water incident last night, Jiang Hai was even more embarrassed. So Jiang Hai smiled at AI Xiaoxi and said sincerely, trying to break this awkward situation. I will. Because there were only the two of them, naturally, when one of them was the model, the other person would be photographed. At this time, Feng Yunshan went to change clothes, and the one who took the photo was AI Xiaoxi. For Jiang Hai's words to break the awkwardness, AI Xiaoxi was really not in the mood to comment now, because at this time, she was still in a dilemma. If there was really light in a while, what should she do? Okay, the first set, let's shoot the window in the living room first. At this moment, Feng Yunshan's cheerful voice also sounded. Hearing her voice, Jiang Hai couldn't help but look back. With this look, even Jiang Hai couldn't help but exclaim. At this time, Feng Yunshan was wearing a set of black lace. Well, a vest and pants, and a black, very transparent lace pajamas on the outside. From the outside, it was obvious what was inside, but it still gave off a mysterious feeling. This set of clothes really made her more charming, and Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little impulsive. But fortunately, he was still able to hold on. According to Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai picked up the silver lighting board and stood at the position AI Xiaoxi asked him to stand. Then AI Xiaoxi tried a few photos first. The light was okay, but Jiang Hai's position was not very good. Then, after a while of adjustments, they officially started shooting. As soon as it was official, Feng Yunshan's originally smiling face instantly turned cold. Although her body was making seductive movements, Her face was as cold as ice. That condescending gaze couldn't help but remind Jiang Hai of a cartoon he had been following, a character in One Piece, the Empress. Although Feng Yunshan didn't say that she was so beautiful, the expression on her face was very similar. It was very similar to the feeling of, bitch, come and lick this queen's feet. Of course, Jiang Hai wouldn't be cheap, but such a charming expression really made people's hearts itch. After taking a few photos of her posing, she directly took off the upper part of the outer layer of pajamas from the top. The black lace vest inside replaced the outer clothes. In the gaps, there was still a trace of white flesh, which looked even more unbearable. Jiang Hai's face was now about to turn purple, but this was actually nothing. Then, Feng Yunshan began to take off the outer lace pajamas. She took it off halfway and took it off to the bottom of her thighs. The scene of casually revealing the perfect curves behind her made Jiang Hai feel like he was going to suffer internal injuries. Fortunately, after about half an hour, the set of clothes was taken. Just as Jiang Hai was about to let out a sigh of relief, she climbed onto the bed and prepared to start shooting the set of photos that made AI Xiaoxi think of a way to do it. He only saw her gently pull down the shoulder bags on both sides, but not completely. Her two hands were hugging and stroking there. The original coldness on her face also turned into a little panic. If Jiang Hai wasn't watching by the side, he might have thought that someone pulled down these two straps. Was this really a photo shoot? Wasn't she afraid that the nutrition of teenagers couldn't keep up? Chapter 339. Cough, this kind of action is not very good. Looking at Feng Yunshan continuing to shoot, Jiang Hai couldn't help but whisper. What's wrong with this? It's not that bad. I still have to shoot the fruit in a while. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan explained to Jiang Hai while doing the action. Cough, do you have to be like this, so hard? Is there no one in the country? Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai almost spat out at once. Is there any law? When is the country so open? As long as it's not exposed, no one will care. Hey, don't ask. This is our job. What you see is employee benefits. Looking at Jiang Hai's somewhat unacceptable look, Feng Yunshan couldn't help laughing. What employee benefits? I don't care, but you. To be honest, there is no exact relationship between Jiang Hai and Feng Yunshan. If there is, maybe the two are just classmates, further classmates, that's all. Originally, Jiang Hai thought that he and Feng Yunshan had a casual relationship. If she had something to ask of him, then he would naturally help. But if she wanted a position, then Jiang Hai had to consider it. Feng Yunshan also knew this, so she didn't ask Jiang Hai to give her a position. She just wanted to be like this. Jiang Hai is her backer. Everyone saw the brilliance of the fox. Naturally, they didn't see what the fox paid in exchange for this tiger's prestige. For Feng Yunshan, Jiang Hai's jealous expression is also her favorite. What? Did you fall in love with me? Feng Yunshan looked at Jiang Hai and said with a smile when she turned around and patted her back. This. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai didn't know what to say. His possessiveness was very strong, but this was not his thing. He didn't know what to say. Please don't fall in love with me, because you can't give me what I want. I can only give you my body. This is my job and my last dignity, so please don't fall in love with me. Looking at Jiang Hai's hesitant look, Feng Yunshan's eyes softened. After whispering to Jiang Hai, she completely removed her inner thoughts. He put his fingers together and pressed them on his vital parts. Then, he turned his body and started shooting. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai's impulsive feelings gradually subsided. He knew that Feng Yunshan was right. It was impossible between them. For a moment, the discomfort in his heart gradually subsided. After about half an hour, the photo on the bed had been taken. Next was the bathroom. In the bathroom, Feng Yunshan had already prepared the water. It was not hot water, but cold water. Because hot water had steam, it was not good to take pictures. only cold water was good. But the cold water was really cold. But as Feng Yunshan said, this was her job. Hongguoguo's body was covered with bubbles left by the bath gel. The parts that could not be exposed were covered by the relevant departments. Then, they started shooting again. Jiang Hai looked at her shooting. To be honest, from the beginning, the dissatisfaction in his heart had gradually turned into a little heartache. Not everyone was as lucky as Jiang Hai. So he first went to increase the temperature of the air conditioner so that she would not be so cold. Then, he put a bathtub of warm water in the guest room next door. After the shooting here was over, he let her go to another room to take a hot bath. She didn't want to catch a cold. Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi both knew that the temperature in the bathroom was very low, so they took pictures very quickly. About 20 minutes later, hundreds of photos were taken. They needed to pick out more than 20 photos and add them together with the previous 2 sets of photos to make a total of 76 photos. This was the total number of photos for a set of photos. Phew, I'm so tired. After seeing Ai Xiaoxi make an okay sign, Feng Yunshan, who was originally pretending to be calm and revealing a contemptuous expression, could not help but jump out of the bathtub in an instant. She took Jiang Hai's bath towel and wrapped it around her body. She was so cold that her upper teeth were chattering. Come, I've already put hot water in the room next door. Let's take a bath first. Otherwise, you'll catch a cold. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan could not help but be stunned. She raised her head and looked at Jiang Hai's concerned gaze. She also smiled. Originally, she came here for Jiang Hai's gaze. Because only by attracting Jiang Hai's attention, Qi Li would not deal with her in China. But now, when she saw Jiang Hai's gaze, she felt a little sad. She was sad for Jiang Hai, and also for herself. For Jiang Hai, because she used Jiang Hai. She felt sorry for him. And she was sad for herself. Why didn't she meet this man earlier? She did not know if this man would still be tempted by her if he did not have money, the manner he had now, and such power. But there were no ifs in this world. The current Jiang Hai was the current Jiang Hai. So she was also very sad for herself. Such a good man was clearly by her side, but she could not grab hold of him. Sad. Although the activity in her heart was like a storm, Feng Yunshan was still very indifferent on the surface. She walked into the bathtub that Jiang Hai had already filled with water for her. The temperature inside was just right. After taking a comfortable bath, Jiang Hai had already walked up with a bowl of ginger soup. This was also prepared for her. Of course, if Ai Xiaoxi also wanted to take these photos later, Jiang Hai would also have a share of this ginger soup. But thinking about it, if Ai Xiaoxi really wanted to take these photos, Jiang Hai could not help but scratch his head. He originally thought that the photo shoot would be similar to those fashion models taking a runway show. Even if it was a little sexy, it would be the kind of see-through clothes on the red carpet. But he really did not think that it would really be a red fruit. When Feng Yunshan was taking photos just now, she did not hide from Jiang Hai. So what Jiang Hai saw last night, he looked at it again today. It made him feel very uncomfortable. But now that he suddenly thought about it, if Ai Xiaoxi was also like this, would it not be too good? Okay, it's your turn. While drinking the ginger soup, Feng Yunshan did not forget what she wanted to do, so she said to Ai Xiaoxi, who was still hesitating. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Ai Xiaoxi was even more confused. Do I really have to take it off later? Hurry up, it's almost dark. Because the shooting started at 1:00 in the afternoon, Feng Yunshan took 1.5 hours to shoot. It was now 2:30 in the afternoon, and 2:30 to 4:00 was the prime time for shooting, so Feng Yunshan urged her. Although Ai Xiaoxi was a newcomer, she had taken a debut photo shoot before, but it was the kind that did not reveal her body. She also knew some questions about the shooting, but she still felt embarrassed. Hurry up. Seeing that she was still hesitating, Feng Yunshan picked up her clothes, stuffed them into her arms, and rushed her into the bathroom. Not long after, the bathroom door opened and Ai Xiaoxi walked out again. At this time, she had changed out of her original clothes. Her light yellow hair was specially combed into a small knot on the right side of her head and tied with a green hair band. She was wearing a white shirt, but the shirt was indeed not big. Her waist and navel were exposed. A green ribbon was tied around her chest to make a butterfly knot. Her lower body was wearing a short skirt with gold inside and green outside. It was really short, probably only covering her underwear. On her legs, she wore a pair of black and white knee socks. It was really beautiful. Hey, it's really customized for you. It's really beautiful. Sexy and cute in one. You are really suitable for cosplay. Looking at Ai Xiaoxi's appearance, Feng Yunshan on the other side also clapped her hands, indicating that she did a good job. What cosplay? Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but have some doubts. Nan Xiaoniao? Don't you watch anime? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but be a little surprised. Isn't Jiang Hai an otaku? How can he not know Nan Xiaoniao? Looking at his confused look, it seems that he really doesn't know. Nan Xiaoniao? Someone in Pirates? Or Hokage? There doesn't seem to be. Dragon Ball and Shinigami? White. Is it Silver Soul? Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai began to try to remember. Hey, you are really an otaku. Do you only watch migrant manga? Love Live, 2D idol project. Well, you are good, you know that this is an anime character. Looking at Jiang Hai's confused look, Feng Yunshan waved her hand. Although she usually doesn't watch anime, at least she knows who the owner of those costumes is. Okay, let's start shooting. With Feng Yunshan's order, Jiang Hai also began to shine. Because of Feng Yunshan's example, this time Jiang Hai is much better than before. Not long after, the living room and the window have been shot, and the next is the highlight. Go to the bed, unbutton the jacket, and then lie on your stomach. Shoot the front and back. Listening to Feng Yunshan's command, Ai Xiaoxi hesitated to lie on the bed. After unbuttoning the jacket, a pure-colored underwear appeared in front of Jiang Hai. Feeling Jiang Hai's gaze, Ai Xiaoxi's whole person was not good, and her body began to tremble unconsciously. It was okay when shooting the front, but when shooting the back, she felt Jiang Hai's gaze piercing her most hidden place. Ai Xiaoxi's whole person was not good, but in fact, she wronged Jiang Hai. Although Jiang Hai is not a gentleman, he still knows that he shouldn't look, so he turned his head away, but Ai Xiaoxi doesn't know this. Take off the jacket, and then unbutton the jacket. Hey, you can't tremble. After taking these two pictures, Feng Yunshan issued a new order, but when this came out, Ai Xiaoxi's whole person was already trembling. Seeing this, Feng Yunshan was helpless. Chapter 340. Hey, you can't do this. We only took one set today. If you continue like this, let alone 10 days, we won't be able to finish it in 20 days. After dinner, sitting in front of the computer, Feng Yunshan skimmed through the photos taken today. Today's shoot went smoothly for her. There were 3 sets of clothes. Well, 2 of them had no clothes, but no matter what, the shoot was done. However, Ai Xiaoxi only had 1 set of clothes to shoot. There were still 2 sets missing, so she could only choose 1 day to shoot, which meant that this afternoon's time would be wasted. She wanted to choose 3 sets of these photos, each with 72 photos, and send them back to the company. The company would mix these photos together and figure out how to make a photo album and release it to the market. Although this money was just a small amount, it was more to make a name for herself. This photo album was actually more of a consumer group in Japan, not in China. There were too many things that were free in China. It was not easy to use a few photos to make money. But this was the most important means of publicity. Like Feng Yunshan and others in this line of work, they were also quite valued. But, hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Ai Xiaoxi hesitated for a moment. She also knew that such an opportunity was hard to come by. Jiang Hai's place was simply the best natural shooting location. If she went back to this village, it would not be easy to find this shop in the future. But showing her body in front of a strange man, Ai Xiaoxi could not bear thinking about it. Not to mention her boyfriend, even her father had not seen her body after 10 years old. Now being looked at by Jiang Hai like this, it would be strange if she felt good in her heart. Listening to Feng Yunshan's words, she felt wronged and a little anxious. Looking at Ai Xiaoxi's tears in her eyes, Feng Yunshan could not help but have a headache. Okay, what are you crying for? You are still reasonable. Forget it, I will help you think about it. Looking at Ai Xiaoxi in front of her, Feng Yunshan said with a look of displeasure, then touched her forehead speechlessly. I understand. No matter what Sister Chen says, I will agree to it. If she didn't take this set of photos, she wouldn't be able to accumulate popularity. If she didn't accumulate popularity, she wouldn't be able to get more opportunities. If she didn't have more opportunities, she wouldn't have money. Therefore, when Ai Xiaoxi heard Feng Yunshan's words, she immediately expressed her stance. Are you really willing to do anything? Looking at Ai Xiaoxi, Feng Yunshan looked at her seriously and asked seriously. Anything. Ai Xiaoxi nodded immediately. She was willing to do anything. Then it's settled. Go to sleep first. I'll think of a way. Seeing Ai Xiaoxi's serious look, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but smile, then got up and left the room. She walked to the end of the corridor, Jiang Hai's room. At this time, Jiang Hai was in the room, talking to Moses Adams on the phone. Since Jiang Hai and Mayor Kirk finished talking about this matter that night, Jiang Hai had already called Moses Adams when he went to pick up Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi the next day. After yesterday's discussion, more than 90% of the people in the town agreed to promote tourism. More than 90% of the people in the town supported the development of tourism. Not only would it allow people to earn more money, but it would also solve a considerable part of the labor problem. Don't forget that after the development of tourism, the number of sanitation workers would need to increase. It should be known that in Western countries such as the United States, sanitation workers were civil servants who received government subsidies. Even in Canada, sanitation workers earned the highest among all the government workers. Although the United States is not like this, they can still earn $50,000 a year. The most important thing is that there is not much age restriction. For such a thing, naturally, everyone agreed. So on the first day this idea was passed, and today's discussion was mainly about it. Boss, the town meeting is basically over. The people in the town think your proposal is good, but they are not satisfied with the proportion of shares you proposed. Listening to Moses Adams's voice on the phone, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. He was very clear about this kind of thing. In fact, whether in China or abroad, people are selfish. Maybe one or two people have noble character and unquestionable integrity, but when it comes to the collective, no one will have such thoughts. Only when a greedy person stands out, then the others will follow. After all, no one will complain about not having enough money. They were happy that Jiang Hai gave all his property to them. This was the reality. I told you that my bottom line is 50%. It has to be at least this amount. I will give you a hint as to how much more it is. The more I have, the more you have. It's that simple. If they are not willing to pay even 50%, then tell them that I will not invest a single penny. Jiang Hai was determined to maintain a good relationship with the town's residents. But maintaining a good relationship does not mean that Jiang Hai will give them money and be their parents. Jiang Hai is right to help the town develop, but the premise is that he also has to make money from it. Boss, I understand. Boss, I understand. I think most of the people in town will understand. These days, the town has already decided on 8 tourism projects. One of them is to visit private manors and horse riding. The Soaring Dragon Manor is not included in this list, so I won't say much about it. Secondly, there is no problem with opening up the beach, fishing boats, shopping streets, beach villas, shooting ranges, and so on. The people here can't wait to make money. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams also smiled a little. In fact, he was not worried that these people would not agree because it was difficult for them to find such high-quality investment. If they really went to find those capitalists to invest, then maybe the proportion of equity would be lower. But don't forget that those people will definitely want the management rights. When the time comes, they will be in charge of how much money they make. They will not be as easy to talk to as Jiang Hai. So he believed that these people would not necessarily agree as long as they were not stupid. It was that simple. So his words were still very optimistic. They were not talking about buying things, and it was not a one-time deal. Naturally, it had to be done step by step. At the same time, because of Jiang Hai's promise, he also knew that if he could increase Jiang Hai's equity to about 60% this time, he would be able to do it. According to Jiang Hai's character, he would definitely not shortchange his own benefits. This was also the reason why he worked so hard. I am very relieved to leave it to you. Moses Adams was an expert in this field. Jiang Hai was very relieved to leave these things to him. Hey, boss, just wait for the good news. Moses Adams also laughed when he heard Jiang Hai's words. Bang bang bang, at this moment, Jiang Hai's door was knocked. Needless to say, Jiang Hai could also guess who came. If it was Delina and Marion, they must have broken in. His room did not have the habit of locking the door. Because in the morning, if little Huang and Xiaobai wanted to go to the toilet, they could not open the door after locking it. So, if they were so polite, they must be his guests. It was impossible for Ai Xiaoxi because she was probably embarrassed to see him at this time. So, it could only be Feng Yunshan. Thinking of this little minx, Jiang Hai felt a fire burning in his lower abdomen. Report to me the progress at any time. Okay, I still have something to do. I will hang up first. After talking to Moses Adams, Jiang Hai hung up the phone, turned over and jumped out of bed. He quickly ran to the door and opened it. Sure enough, when the door was opened, the person standing outside was none other than Feng Yunshan. Who? Looking at Feng Yunshan's laced pajamas and the empty scene inside, Jiang Hai seemed to be unable to control his brain. He took a step forward and hugged Feng Yunshan in his arms. His big mouth was already on Feng Yunshan's mouth, and Feng Yunshan was also very active. The two kissed at the door. Just as Jiang Hai felt that his fire was getting stronger and stronger and was about to take her into the house, Feng Yunshan pushed him. Don't go to your room, it's full of the smell of dogs. Feng Yunshan patted Jiang Hai's chest and complained. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. In fact, Xiaobai and Little Yellow are very hygienic. Almost every few days, they will go to the reservoir at the cowshed to take a bath. They will wash themselves, so there are no parasites on them. In addition, they usually go to the toilet outside. In Jiang Hai's villa, the smell of dogs is not heavy. But no matter how heavy it is still there. Now that he heard Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai was a little confused. Then, let's go to the guest room. Looking at her, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. Come with me. Seeing Jiang Hai's anxious look, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. This Jiang Hai is really cute. Pulling Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai was also a little confused at this time because he didn't know where she was going to take him. They walked in a straight line on the second floor and finally came to their room. Go to the opposite room? Seeing the guest room, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say with some hesitation. No, just here. If you dirty the other rooms, you have to clean them up tomorrow. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan shook her head and pulled Jiang Hai into her and Ai Xiaoxi's room. As soon as he walked in, Jiang Hai was shocked. But when he looked back, he found that Ai Xiaoxi was already asleep on the bed at this time. He was relieved, but he quickly whispered, Here? You are crazy, there is still her. Don't worry, she is asleep, even thunder can't wake her up. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan smiled a little strangely. Chapter 341. What do you mean by falling asleep? Hearing what Feng Yunshan said, Jiang Hai subconsciously wanted to refuse, but Feng Yunshan did not give him a chance to refuse. She directly knelt on the ground and took off Jiang Hai's slightly loose pajama pants. Then Jiang Hai felt an incredible feeling invading his brain. The last time he had this feeling was at home during the New Year, and the partner was also Feng Yunshan. Last night, when the two met, it was like thunder and fire. How could they have the leisure and mood to play these things? They were all direct and direct. Today, after Feng Yunshan did this, Jiang Hai really couldn't say anything. Lower your voice. Otherwise, I'll help you too. Jiang Hai is not a person who doesn't care about other people, so he hesitated for a moment and asked Feng Yunshan. He used to watch those Japanese literary action idol dramas, and they all acted like this. They used two numbers that looked very similar to express a kind of attitude. There's no need. When I take photos there, I can't change the color. All three vital parts are like this. The top part is fine, but you can't touch the bottom part with your tongue. Feng Yunshan raised her head and whispered, then she began to continue. Jiang Hai was enjoying it while looking at Ai Xiaoxi on the bed. He was really afraid that she would suddenly wake up. But Jiang Hai didn't notice that Ai Xiaoxi's eyes were actually open. At this time, she was so embarrassed that her face was red. She didn't expect that Feng Yunshan's method was actually this method. This was too embarrassing. Now, except for pretending to be asleep, she didn't know what to do. Her body didn't even dare to move. It seemed that it had become stiff. Listening to the sound of water in her ears, Ai Xiaoxi was stunned. This Feng Yunshan is too bold. After waiting for the sound of water to end, Feng Yunshan's two words made her collapse even more. Come on. Come on what? There's no need to say more now, okay? If you say more, the book will be banned. With a muffled shout, the rhythm in the room changed, and the smell in the room gradually changed. The air conditioner, which was still on, seemed to be getting hotter and hotter. Not long after, Xiaoxi's forehead was covered in sweat. He didn't know how much time had passed. It could have been an hour or two, but it would have taken at least an hour. As Feng Yunshan's voice sounded for the third time, Jiang Hai's voice also sounded. Just like Feng Yunshan, Ai Xiaoxi's body was sore and weak for the third time. Right now, her body didn't have any strength left. She wanted to sleep, but her mind wasn't sleepy at all. I'm going to take a bath. After a soft sound, Feng Yunshan's deliberately lowered voice entered Ai Xiaoxi's ears. Want to do it together? Let's do it again. Looking at Feng Yunshan's exposed figure in front of him, Jiang Hai also stood up. There was a trace of excitement in his low voice, but Feng Yunshan patted him. No, you still have to shoot tomorrow. If you really don't have enough to eat, isn't there another one on the bed? As Feng Yunshan's voice fell, Ai Xiaoxi was stunned in an instant. Her whole body began to tremble unconsciously. What's going on? Now her mind is blank, and she doesn't know what to do. Don't joke around. But after listening to Feng Yunshan's words, Jiang Hai's slightly unhappy voice sounded. Hearing Jiang Hai's voice, Ai Xiaoxi felt a little wronged. Am I not beautiful? What does Jiang Hai mean by this? Remember, you are willing to do anything. If you don't want to, just say it. I don't think he will force you. But Feng Yunshan didn't give Jiang Hai much time to think. After shouting directly to Ai Xiaoxi, who was still in bed, she went into the bathroom to take a bath, leaving only Jiang Hai and Ai Xiaoxi, who was still pretending to be asleep. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was also a little confused. He decided to go and see what's going on with Ai Xiaoxi first. Walking to the bedside, he saw Ai Xiaoxi's eyes were wide open, which made Jiang Hai feel a little embarrassed. But fortunately, when he walked forward, he had already put on his pajamas, so it won't be like last night. Cough, you haven't slept yet? If you haven't slept, then I'll go first. As it turned out, Jiang Hai really didn't have the guts. His guts were sometimes very big, sometimes very small, especially when it came to women. Wait. Seeing Jiang Hai was about to leave, Ai Xiaoxi suddenly sat up and stopped Jiang Hai. Don't tell me you really want that. Looking at Ai Xiaoxi's somewhat evasive and firm eyes, Jiang Hai's footsteps couldn't help but stop. Isn't this a bit too crazy? I'm willing to do anything. Biting her lower lip, Ai Xiaoxi blurted out such a sentence, then pulled Jiang Hai with her hand. Jiang Hai didn't use much force and was pulled to the bed by her. The two looked at each other on the bed. Ai Xiaoxi seemed to have made up her mind. She directly hugged Jiang Hai's neck and took the initiative to kiss him. In an instant, in addition to the man's taste, there was also a faint peach taste in her mouth. She knew that this was Feng Yunshan's taste. She didn't know why, but she didn't feel uncomfortable in her heart. Feeling Ai Xiaoxi's clumsy movements, Jiang Hai no longer hesitated. Just like what he said before, Jiang Hai would gladly accept any girl who came to him and wasn't afraid of sticking to his hands. Although he had only known this girl for 2 days, since she took the initiative, then Jiang Hai didn't care. His hands also began to take the initiative. After about a few minutes, he also touched the most important part. Feeling the water flow there, and seeing Ai Xiaoxi's red face, Jiang Hai guessed that she should have seen everything. Since the other party was already prepared, Jiang Hai didn't hold back. See. But just as he started, Ai Xiaoxi's whole body tensed up and hugged Jiang Hai tightly. Jiang Hai also felt that something was different. You are. At this time, Jiang Hai's eyes were wide open. He really didn't expect that the girl in front of him had never done such a thing before. Subconsciously, he wanted to end it here. Don't, just like this, just wait for a while. Feeling Jiang Hai's movements, Ai Xiaoxi instantly hugged Jiang Hai tightly and said in his ear. This time, Jiang Hai really didn't dare to move. After about 10 minutes, Ai Xiaoxi took the initiative to slowly. Feng Yunshan's bath was very long. After she finished, 40 minutes had already passed. As soon as she came out of the bathroom, she saw that Ai Xiaoxi had already taken the initiative. Seeing this scene, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but smile and walk to the bedside. Half lying on the bed, she saw that Ai Xiaoxi's face was a little red after seeing her. She smiled and said, I really envy you. The other party is Jiang Hai for the first time, TSK, Sister Chen. Hugging Jiang Hai, Ai Xiaoxi didn't know what to say at this time. She could only mutter in a low voice, I'll sleep next to him. I'll sleep at the side. He's yours tonight. Seeing that Ai Xiaoxi was still acting coquettishly, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but slap her butt. She got up and went to the next room, leaving only Jiang Hai and Ai Xiaoxi. The next morning, when Ai Xiaoxi woke up, she found that Jiang Hai was no longer there. She instantly felt a little disappointed in her heart. However, when she saw the dirty and wet bedsheet that was thrown aside at the end of yesterday's session, her face turned red as if it was congested. She subconsciously wanted to get off the bed, but she suddenly remembered that women would be in a lot of pain the next day. Thinking of this, she tried to move a little. In the end, she found that other than feeling a little strange, she didn't feel any pain. This really surprised her. When she got off the bed, she found that it was already past 9:00 in the morning. When she went to wash up, she found that her body seemed to have become a little better. Originally, she was 22 years old and her body hadn't developed to its peak. After last night, it really seemed to have changed a lot. A certain place that wasn't considered spectacular before was now very spectacular. Sure enough, when she wore the vest from before, it was a little small. Her waist was also a lot thinner, her legs seemed to have become longer, and her skin was more firm. It seems that what they said before about doing that kind of thing can make a woman more beautiful is true. Looking at herself in the mirror, AI Xiaoxi couldn't help but be a little surprised. She had to admit that sometimes, her imagination was still very rich. In fact, the reason why she didn't have any reaction now and her figure became better was mainly because last night, Jiang Hai injected half of the spiritual energy in the scale into her and Feng Yunshan. Half of the spiritual energy is not enough to repair all the physical conditions, such as the layer that has been broken. But it can restore a person's body to its best state. The hidden diseases will disappear, the skin will become better, the figure will become better, and they will be full of energy. As for the injuries, they will naturally be all healed. AI Xiaoxi found that she couldn't wear her previous clothes, but fortunately, they brought a lot of clothes this time. She picked a different style, then she put on her coat and walked downstairs. When she went downstairs, she found that Jiang Hai was playing a game with Feng Yunshan. It should be a tennis game. On the huge projection TV in Jiang Hai's living room, the two of them were playing happily. Listening to the laughter of the two, AI Xiaoxi felt a little lost in her heart, but she still walked down. "Hey, sister, come and help me beat him." At this moment, Feng Yunshan just turned her head and saw AI Xiaoxi walking down, and she couldn't help but say to her. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also turned his head, but there was a trace of embarrassment on his face. "No, you guys go ahead, I'm a little tired." Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, AI Xiaoxi looked at Jiang Hai, who was still a little embarrassed, couldn't help but lower her head, shook her head, and rejected Feng Yunshan's proposal. Chapter 342. The United States had never been a good place for immigrants, especially to the Chinese. Although many Chinese had been spreading the news about the United States, the people living in the United States knew about it. If you are a rich man, then this is heaven, no matter which city, no matter where, this is heaven. But if you don't have money, America is hell. A hell that will push you to the bottom. Everything in the United States was taxed. The average household savings for most of the 300 million people in the United States was only about $1,000. In China, the average household savings for urban residents was about $100,000. Of course, you might think this is bullshit, but you have to consider how much the house you are living in is worth. Real estate is also counted as assets. So, it is not too much to say that every household has $100,000. Most Americans rent their houses because the taxes to buy a house are too high. Everything in America is taxed. Some people say that America has good medical care, health insurance, and Social Security. But you have to pay a certain level of taxes. For example, the minimum medical care in China is not available here. The amount of taxes you pay depends on the amount of medical care you receive. Without taxes, you can't even buy cold medicine here. Cold medicine is also a prescription. If you go to the hospital for a cold, the local doctor will be merciful if they don't charge you at least $1,000. Most importantly, if you want to bring cold medicine out of China, you are not allowed to do so. If you go to the hospital, you can only take vitamins at home and use the white blood cells in your body to kill the virus. But this is also why Americans look so strong. At least, they don't lack these things. In China, the highest personal income tax rate was 20%, and the lowest was none. People with incomes below 800 renminbi did not have to pay taxes. For those with incomes above 800 renminbi, if they were state-owned enterprises, they would only collect a symbolic amount, a few RMB, or even a few dozen RMB. For incomes above $10,000, other than those web novelists, other people with normal income will not be charged much. Other than that, bonuses and year-end bonuses are not taxed, and they do not exist in America. You had to pay state taxes in America. If your annual income was over $100,000, you would be charged 35% of your salary and bonuses. State taxes would be calculated separately. Remember, this 35%, or even 40%, or even 50% of the tax is something you have to pay. It doesn't include any benefits. You have to pay the residence tax for the house, and you have to pay the tax every year for the 8 years after you buy the car. You also have to pay the tax for medical insurance and Social Security. Naturally, you have to pay the tax as well. For example, if a person lived in New York and earned $100,000 a year, more than 60% of it would have to be paid to the American government, unless he wanted to go to jail. In the United States, tax evasion was the most serious crime, even more serious than murder. There was no such thing as tax exemption in the United States. The most vicious unit in the United States was not the FBI or the CIA, but the IRS. Its full name was the Internal Revenue Service of the United States, which was part of the Treasury Department. There was a piece of news a long time ago. It was said that a dentist from Japan had immigrated to the United States and opened a clinic. He only reported $400,000 a year in taxes, but American dentists had an annual income of $1 million, evil dentists. This attracted the attention of the IRS, so they started an investigation. They sent people to pretend to be patients, investigate his clinic, and follow his patients like agents. After a month of investigation, they discovered that he could earn $150,000 a month. The difference was huge. After enough evidence was gathered, the IRS came to arrest him. In the end, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison without bail. He also had to pay $5 million in back taxes. Do you think that's the end of it? He still had to pay the rest in one go. The fine was $24 million. If he paid $29 million immediately and went to jail for 3 years, he could still be a dentist when he came out. But if he didn't pay, he would be behind 10,000 years. Even if he died in prison, he wouldn't be able to pay off the $29 million. That was the reality. On the other hand, if you buy something, the money you buy will be taxed, and the money he sells will also be taxed. Two-way taxation was very common in the United States. Why else do you think duty-free shops were so popular? Because of the high taxes, many people in the United States were helpless because they couldn't afford to live. In such an environment where guns were not banned, many people who couldn't afford to live went astray. Of course, most tourists couldn't see these people. Those who did see them were mostly dead. In such an environment, many cities in the United States were called the cities of crime. Some nosy media made a ranking of the top 10 cities of crime in the United States. Cleveland was ranked 10th with 84 murders in 2012 and a poverty rate of 34.3%. Baltimore was ranked 9th with 219 murders in 2012 and a poverty rate of 25.2%. 8th place was New Haven, 7th place was Birmingham, 6th place was Stockton, California, and 5th place was Memphis, Tennessee, which was the city where the grizzly bears were located, with 133 murders in 12 years. 4th place was St. Louis, and 3rd place was Oakland, California, which was the city where the Warriors were located. 2nd place was the newest dark city, Detroit, with 386 murders in 12 years and a total population of only 700,000. Flint was ranked 1st, with a population of 100,000. 63 murders in 2012 and a poverty rate of 40.6%. If there were still some losers who insisted that the United States was a good place, they would have nothing to say. But before these cities of crime, the United States was not peaceful, but it was not the center of the chaos. In the decades after the founding of the country, the 4 cities of crime in the United States were all cities in the East. The southernmost city was Miami, which Jiang Hai had been to. The westernmost city was Chicago, which was the city of crime, and the metropolis of New York, which was the scene of The Godfather. Apart from these 3 cities, the city of evil with the longest history was actually Boston. From the 1950s until the 1970s, Boston had been under the rule of the Irish gang. There was no good place in the entire south end of Boston. Of course, in recent years, after the vigorous crackdown by the United States government, the gangs here had long disappeared. But just like in a place where people can't see, there will always be a gray area. There are also a lot of people who are engaged in those unknown professions. Among these people, there are also some who have a grudge against Jiang Hai. For example, this person, Billy Wallen, do you think we can't find you if you hide? At this time, In an abandoned warehouse in the South District of Boston, several men in black suits blocked a group of people in the warehouse. Of course, rather than saying that they were blocked, it would be more accurate to say that they were found. This was because there were more than 30 people in this warehouse, and there were only 4 of these men in black. More than 30 against 4, it would be more believable to say that they were blocked. Hey, my Huaxia friend, I don't understand, what are you talking about? Hide. Who am I? When did I hide? Hearing the words of the leader of the men in black, a hooligan sitting in the middle of the crowd said knowingly. It's best that you didn't hide. You took our money, but you didn't help us. This matter put a lot of pressure on us. After all, we also have people above us. Hearing this man's words, the man in black didn't care, then he pushed his sunglasses and said calmly, but the meaning in his words was obvious, the intention of threatening was strong. Hey, my mysterious Huaxia friend, I didn't mean to not do anything, but you know, that guy is not as easy to deal with as you think, so this price can't be the same as before. Squinting, the white man said with a smile on his face. Billy Wallen, don't play this kind of trick with us. You offered the price of $1 million. Now you have taken $500,000 from us, and you are recruiting and expanding everywhere. Now you tell us that you can't do it. Do you really think we can't do anything to you? Hearing his words, the man in black gently tapped the leather shoes on his feet. He said slowly. Hearing his words, the people on Billy Wallen's side instantly felt a strong murderous intent. The first person pulled out his gun, then more people pulled out their guns and stared at the 4 people in front of them with cold faces. Hey, man, be careful with your words. I didn't say I wouldn't do it, I did it, but it didn't succeed. The other party is related to the police. If we want to deal with him, we need more people and more weapons. Your original money is not enough. Billy Wallen pressed the gun of the person next to him, smiled softly and said with a serious face. Then tell me, how much do you want? Looking at the man's face, the man in black said indifferently. The original price of $1 million, double it, $2 million. Billy Wallen stretched out 2 fingers and said with a smile. I'll give you $5 million, this is a cashier's check for $500,000, plus the previous $500,000, this is the deposit. When you kill him, the remaining $4 million will be transferred to your bank account. Hearing Billy Wallen's words, the man smiled disdainfully, then took out a check from his pocket, gently threw it on the ground, and then left without looking back. As for Billy Wallen's men at this time, they had long been shocked by the number of 5 million. You know, this is a quite large number. They really didn't think that the man's life would be worth so much money. After they left, Billy Wallen's lackey immediately ran over and picked up the check. Boss, it's true, are we really going to do it? Looking at Billy Wallen in front of him, his men said softly. Hey, the money is in place, so we naturally have to do it. Looking at the bank check for $500,000 in his hand, Billy Wallen's eyes narrowed. At this time, outside, the men in black also walked into a car and drove to the city center. Big brother, why is the young master in such a hurry this time? Didn't he say that things were temporarily put on hold last time? After getting into the car together, a man in black sitting in the passenger seat took off his glasses and looked back at the man in the driver's seat with some confusion. I heard that his son was killed in Miami, and all the criminal evidence was given to someone in China by his son's bodyguard. The most important thing is that this Jiang Hai is not only related to Chile, but the beef used in the signature dish of the Western restaurant set up by the Qi family was imported from Jiang Hai. If something happens to Jiang Hai now, not only can it break Qi Li's heart, but it can also break the roots of the Qi family and prevent their Western restaurant from becoming a burden on them. Squinting his eyes, the man chuckled and said, but he didn't notice that after hearing his words, a man in the back seat made some small movements. At this time, Jiang Hai naturally didn't know this. Now he was using his shield and leading Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi to his forest. Chapter 343. Sitting on a rock on a small path in Jiang Hai's forest, Jiang Hai looked at Ai Xiaoxi, who was fiddling with the camera next to him. Today's shoot was in the forest, so there were 2 sets of clothes. After all, it was in the wild, so it was not like yesterday. But the second set was to take off the top of the first set of clothes and cover the important parts of the body. Compared to yesterday, Feng Yunshan's method was very good. At least Ai Xiaoxi was not shy in front of Jiang Hai to the point that she couldn't take the shot. Although she was still a little shy, with her pure appearance, there was a different flavor. At least after Jiang Hai watched the film, he wanted to hold her in his arms and feel sorry for her. The shoot went smoothly. After an hour, Ai Xiaoxi was finished, and the next one to shoot was Feng Yunshan. When Feng Yunshan went to the car to change clothes, only Jiang Hai and Ai Xiaoxi were left here. To be honest, the current situation between Jiang Hai and Ai Xiaoxi was indeed quite strange. There was 30% ambiguity, 50% awkwardness, and 20% unfamiliarity, but Jiang Hai felt that after all, he took advantage of the girl. If he didn't say a word and acted like a heartless man, he wouldn't be able to convince himself. Jiang Hai wasn't a good person, but he wasn't a bad guy either. He wasn't like those pretentious people who always talked about having a bottom line and dreams. For Jiang Hai, he didn't have a bottom line to speak of. Of course, he also didn't have any dreams to speak of. His dream was to have endless money to spend, to do nothing every day, to eat good food, and to have fun. Now that he had achieved his dream, what he was doing now was just following his heart. He felt a little sorry for the girl in front of him, so he was trying to find a way to ease this awkward situation. Do you like photography? Looking at Ai Xiaoxi, who was fiddling with the camera, Jiang Hai hesitated and asked. It's okay. Which girl doesn't like to take selfies? It's just that the price of a DSLR camera is very expensive. In China, the cheapest ones are more than 2,000 yuan, and they don't come with a lens. The better ones cost more than 10,000 yuan, like the one in my hand, it costs more than 15,000 yuan. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ai Xiaoxi nodded, and Jiang Hai also noted it down. In fact, DSLRs were not cheap in the United States. Of course, to Jiang Hai, these were nothing. I don't know much about these. I only know that there are Canon, Nikon, and so on. I don't know the specifics. When I was in China, I only had money to buy the worst camera. When Jiang Hai heard that she was willing to talk to him, he let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile. This is Canon. Although I look down on the Japanese brand is really strong, especially in these electrical appliances. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ai Xiaoxi didn't think much and continued to speak. She was telling the truth. Indeed, the people of Huaxia were naturally hostile to the Japanese. Especially Jiang Hai, who was still in the northeast. His family didn't come from Guangdong, but was born and raised in the northeast. He heard his grandfather say before that in fact, there was no one in the northeast who didn't hate the Japanese. Of course, in addition to the Japanese, they also hated the Russians. In the beginning, the Russians also did a lot of harm to the people of Huaxia. But later, they were the big brother, so the higher-ups asked them to suppress the hatred. In Jiang Hai's generation, the hatred for the Russians gradually disappeared. However, under the propaganda of the imperial court, the hatred for the Japanese has never decreased. Although they hate the Japanese, they have to admit that the development of the Japanese industry is indeed a bit of a bug. The automobile industry, such a small place like Japan, can compete with the United States and Europe, and become the world's third largest automobile industry. It can be said that it is not strong. The light industry, needless to say, the camera, the world's 3 major camera brands, Canon, Nikon, Olympus, are all Japanese. In addition, the Japanese rice cooker is sold for more than 10,000 yuan in China, and there are people who buy it. The manufacturing of drugs and other light industries can indeed be ranked at the top of the world. Even if Jiang Hai doesn't want to admit it, the rice cooker in his family is also Japanese. After Ai Xiaoxi opened her mouth, she started to talk to Jiang Hai about the camera. Her words are not like what she said just now. She just likes to take selfies. It seems that she really likes to take photos. To be precise, she likes the camera. What long focal length, short focal length, continuous shooting, second shooting and so on. She was talking, and Jiang Hai felt like he was listening to a heavenly book. Heaven and earth can testify that Jiang Hai is really not interested in this kind of thing. In the past, he was a loser. At one time, the most famous saying was, photography is poor for 3 generations, DSLRs are ruined for life. In the past, Jiang Hai didn't want to ruin his life, so he didn't play with this kind of thing. Now, when he hears these professional terms, it is like listening to a book. No matter what others think, Jiang Hai can't understand. Although Jiang Hai pretended that he is listening very seriously, the tears that are about to come out of his eyes prove that he is not listening. Seeing him like this, Ai Xiaoxi can't help but laugh. You don't have to deliberately talk to me about things that interest me. I said that I was willing to do what I did last night. It's okay. Looking at Jiang Hai, Ai Xiaoxi lowered her head again and said lightly. But. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also knows that it is difficult for him to do anything for this girl, but this matter is a bit difficult to handle. You don't have to think about it. I have a boyfriend, so you don't have to blame yourself. When I first entered this industry, I already thought about it. My body is definitely not safe. Instead of giving it to a fat nouveau riche, it is better to give it to you. Just like what Sister Chen said last night, it may be a good choice to do it with you for the first time. Glancing at Jiang Hai, Ai Xiaoxi's face was a little red, but looking at her seemingly resigned expression, this made Jiang Hai even more embarrassed. But at this time, he really doesn't know what to say. First, it is because he is not good with words. Second, it is because he really can't get over the hurdle in his heart. He can't tell this girl to be his girlfriend, and he can't promise her anything. So Jiang Hai is really in a dilemma now. After hesitating for a while, he still tried to speak. Then we are, no matter what, considered friends. We don't seem to know each other very well. Why don't we introduce ourselves? Listening to Jiang Hai's slightly childish idea, Ai Xiaoxi wanted to laugh, but she also wanted to cry. This man seems to be really good. Okay. Although her mind was thinking of rejecting such a childish topic, Ai Xiaoxi's mouth loyally replied. Then I will say it first. My name is Jiang Hai. I was born in 1988. I am from Bing City. I have always stayed in the country. I came abroad last year. I once had a failed marriage. Hearing Ai Xiaoxi agree, Jiang Hai also began to talk about his own affairs. Of course, it was just a general introduction. He introduced his life, his manner, and let Ai Xiaoxi have a preliminary understanding of him. Of course, he didn't intend to hide his marriage from her. Even if he didn't say, Ai Xiaoxi would know if she asked Feng Yunchen. My name is Ai Xiaoxi. I am from Lu Province. I was born in 1993. I am 22 years old this year. I was originally in my 3rd year of university, but because something happened at home, I dropped out. Now, like Sister Chen, I am signed with XX Management Company. My main occupation is modeling and SG. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ai Xiaoxi also introduced herself, but also didn't go into too much detail. However, Jiang Hai could hear the sadness in her words. He really wanted to ask her why she dropped out of school. What happened at home? With their relationship, if it was a problem with money, then it was not a problem for Jiang Hai. However, Jiang Hai couldn't say it because it seemed that Ai Xiaoxi also didn't want to say it. Ah. Just when the two of them had nothing to talk about and there was some awkward silence, Feng Yunshen's scream suddenly came from afar. Hearing this scream, Jiang Hai immediately reacted. After throwing the reflector on the ground, he rushed to the front of his car in a few strides. At this time, in his line of sight, he saw Feng Yunshen, who had just changed into a leather coat, getting out of the car. And in the grass opposite her, a huge lion's head was staring at her fiercely. F***ck, it's a mountain lion again. Jiang Hai was no stranger to this kind of creature because he just caught one a few days ago. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai's legs exerted force, and in an instant, he flew straight over his battle shield and landed instantly, standing between Feng Yunchen and the mountain lion. Get in the car immediately, then help AI Xiaoxi get in the car. AI Xiaoxi, get in the car quickly. The sudden appearance of Jiang Hai not only shocked Feng Yunchen but also the mountain lion. Taking advantage of the time when the mountain lion was face to face with him, Jiang Hai said loudly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunchen got into the car immediately, and AI Xiaoxi on the other side couldn't care about anything else. She quickly ran over with her camera, got into the car, and locked the door. Jiang Hai, get in the car. Seeing AI Xiaoxi close the door on the other side, Feng Yunchen calmed down a little. She opened the door a little and said to Jiang Hai, but Jiang Hai shook his head at her. Don't worry about me, this guy is not my opponent, but why do I think this guy looks familiar? As Jiang Hai said, his eyes were firmly staring at the mountain lion in front of him. Indeed, when he looked over, Jiang Hai didn't feel anything, but now, he did find that this mountain lion looked familiar, especially the scars on its face that had just healed. Out of curiosity, Jiang Hai also glanced at its legs, which made him frown. Isn't this the one I caught last time? Chapter 344. Yes, this mountain lion was the female mountain lion that Jiang Hai caught last time. This fellow sneaked into Jiang Hai's manor and attacked Qi Li, who came out to chat with Jiang Hai. Fortunately, Jiang Hai was here at the time. Otherwise, if it were anyone else, a tragedy might have happened. At that time, Jiang Hai brought the 2 dogs to subdue this fellow and then send it to the stray pet center. Why did this fellow come out again? In fact, what Jiang Hai did not know was that after he sent this fellow to the stray pet center. In the beginning, the stray pet center did treat her injuries. However, after her injuries were almost healed, considering that this was a pregnant lioness, it was naturally best to put her back in the mountain forest. Therefore, last week, she was released back to the Alabama mountains. However, who knew that after this lioness circled around, she actually ran to Jiang Hai's manor again. In fact, this mountain lion could not be blamed. Indeed, it was difficult to understand the benefits of Jiang Hai's manor if one had not been to it. Although Jiang Hai had only strengthened the spiritual energy of the pasture, it was mainly for cows to eat. However, in addition to cows, there were many herbivores that would also eat these pasture. Although Jiang Hai had surrounded this place with railings, large animals and humans could not enter. However, it did not prevent some small herbivores from coming to his manor. The environment in the United States was very good, so insects, rabbits, mice, and the like came to settle down. And when they came, the things that ate them also came over. Birds that ate insects, weasels that ate rabbits, foxes, snakes that ate mice, owls, and so on. Originally, there were many birds in Jiang Hai's forest, but Jiang Hai did not care. However, if he counted now, he would find that the birds in his forest were at least 3 times more than at the same time last year. The reason why this mountain lion had attacked Jiang Hai and Qi Li was mainly because it was pregnant and had already treated this manor as its territory. However, Jiang Hai later told it that he was the boss here. But that didn't stop it from coming back after it left. If the grassland didn't work, it would enter the forest. The grass on the pasture had spiritual energy, and the animals that ate the pasture also had spiritual energy. A few days ago, it had been hunting rabbits, mice, and the like. Naturally, it knew how much energy these things contained. Not only could the spiritual qi fill its stomach, but the energy contained in a rabbit was even higher than that of an adult white-tailed deer in the Alabama mountains. Besides, the spiritual qi nourished its body and made it smarter and more agile. It was sure that once its baby was born, its baby would naturally be very powerful. It was precisely because of this that it treated this place as its nursery. Of course, after giving birth, it probably wouldn't leave. There were no other large carnivores here, and it had no natural enemies. It was simply a natural treasure land. It was precisely because of this that it deliberately circled around and swam over from the other side of the coastline. However, who knew that it would encounter another human in its new home after a few days? The fellow who had defeated it. Looking at Jiang Hai, the mountain lion did not dare to move. After experiencing Jiang Hai's combat strength, it had no choice but to be more obedient. It only looked at Jiang Hai from the grass. After realizing that Jiang Hai did not move, it could not help but cower. It knew that it could not defeat this man. Most importantly, this man had 2 big dogs. Thus, it shook its butt and turned to enter the forest. Although Jiang Hai was guarding against it, it was actually more afraid of Jiang Hai. As soon as it left Jiang Hai's sight, it ran away. In a few moments, it disappeared from Jiang Hai's sight. Looking at it leaving, Jiang Hai could not help but frown. This guy is a beast. Although it has no desire to attack him now, who knows what will happen in the future. It seems that I have to search the net. Jiang Hai muttered in his heart as he opened the car door again. Is there anything wrong? Looking at Jiang Hai who opened the door, Feng Yunshan asked anxiously for the first time. You saw it too. What can happen? It's just a big cat. Let's continue shooting. That guy shouldn't be coming back. Looking at the mountain lion's figure, Jiang Hai said casually. However, after Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi got out of the car, he deliberately went around and took out the desert eagle from the back of the car and pinned it to his waist. After all, no one knows if that guy will come back or not. If it comes back, then Jiang Hai will let it taste the taste of a gun. Although Jiang Hai is unwilling to kill it, if it keeps threatening his manor, then killing it may be the only choice. However, this mountain lion did not know Jiang Hai's thoughts because it left and did not come back. In the following shooting, Feng Yunshan was still a little worried at the beginning. When shooting the pose, she always subconsciously looked behind her. But fortunately, later, maybe she really felt that everything was fine, so she relaxed. After a whole afternoon of shooting, they finally finished shooting, packed up their things, and changed their clothes. The 3 of them walked back home, but when they went back, Feng Yunshan still had some lingering fears. Hey, Robins. Looking at her, Jiang Hai was also a little worried. Just when he came back, he saw Robins Garcia who had already driven the herd back and was preparing to go home for dinner. He couldn't help but call out to him loudly. Hey, boss, what's the matter? At this time, Robins Garcia, who was riding a horse, heard Jiang Hai's words and couldn't help but stop. He calmed the horses that were frightened by the arrival of the car and asked Jiang Hai. Do you remember the mountain lion we caught? It's back again. I just went to the forest and found it. It seems that we have to find a time to send it away. Looking at Robins Garcia, Jiang Hai said helplessly. That guy is back again? How did it come back? There are no traces of damage on the recent border fence. Did it swim or fly in? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robins was also stunned. The fences on land are taken care of by these cowboys. It is naturally their responsibility to catch the mountain lion, but they really didn't find out how this guy came in. Maybe it came in along the sea. In fact, Jiang Hai wasn't very sure, but he didn't have a seine in his fishing ground, so it was very likely that the mountain lion swam into his manor through the ocean. If this was the case, then the cordon on the ocean would have to be pulled up. But to pull up this cordon, he didn't need to use people, just fish. He had a natural bodyguard in his fish farm. It just so happened that Big Dumb had nothing to do all day, so it was naturally the best choice for him to patrol the fish farm. But thinking about it, it had been a while since he last saw Big Dumb, so he decided to check on him first. Maybe, if it is, then it will be troublesome, because if this is the case, then we will drive it away, but it will come back. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robins Garcia couldn't help but sigh helplessly. Because Jiang Hai's manor, the area of the sea is much larger than the area on land. Except for the manor on land, the coastline extends far, and it is all Jiang Hai's territory. Jiang Hai has no way to enclose the entire sea with fences, unless Jiang Hai uses seine, but the consumption of seine is too high. And the most important thing is that many of Jiang Hai's fish are migratory fish, such as sardines. Jiang Hai will not only rely on his own fish to make money, these migratory fish are also their important source of income. If seine is used, not only his fish can't go out, but other fish can't come in, which is a big problem. Therefore, other than those that were specially bred, there were very few people who would use something like a purse seine. This was also a troublesome matter. It's okay, I will solve the problem in the sea myself. As for the mountain lion, let's see when we can do it. Thinking that he still has big dumb, Jiang Hai can't help but wave his hand at Robbins, indicating that it is not a big deal. The most important thing now is to catch the mountain lion and send it away. This is not because Jiang Hai is stingy, but because the mountain lion hasn't hurt anyone yet, nor has it hurt Jiang Hai's livestock. But what about in the future? In winter, when it snows heavily, most animals will hibernate. What if the mountain lion has nothing to eat? The beast's mind will force it to leave the forest, and then it will either sneak attack Jiang Hai's cows or them. As for cows, a cow was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people were priceless. Jiang Hai couldn't take such a risk. Okay, let's wait for the first batch of cows. The appointment between Mr. Zhang and Miss Walton is in the next 2 days. When the first batch of beef cows is out, we can send at least 3 people. Boss, you can ask Edward Anderson for a few more people. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Robbins Garcia also calculated that there is no problem with the time. The appointed time? Is the appointed time in the next 2 days? Hearing Robbins agree, Jiang Hai also nodded, but then he thought about what Robbins just said. Zhang Dihai and Pra Walton will come to get the cows in the next 2 days. Jiang Hai thought carefully, the content of the last call was in the next few days. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai felt a little embarrassed. Unknowingly, his cows are finally going to be released. After a few more words with Robbins, Jiang Hai drove back to his villa. After sending Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi back to the villa and letting them rest, Jiang Hai drove to the dock again. This is because he still has to talk to Edward Anderson about the mountain lion hunt. In addition, he also wants to see Big Dumb. Thinking that he hasn't seen this big shark for almost a month, I wonder how big it is now. Chapter 345. Plop. With a sound, a piece of beef weighing about 4 to 5 catties was thrown into the sea. As the beef entered the water, all the fish in this area went crazy. No fish was vegetarian. All the fish ate meat, including carp, crucian carp, silver carp, and so on. These fish were all omnivorous. If there were vegetables, they would eat. If there was no feed, they would eat feed. If there was meat, they would eat meat. Even the little phoenix at home would eat meat. Thinking about those fish that had just given birth, it was clear whether they would eat their babies. Surrounding this piece of beef, regardless of whether it was an adult or an underage one, Jiang Hai raised it, or a wild one here. All the fish rushed up crazily and began to bite this piece of beef. The senses of animals were much more sensitive than that of humans. They naturally felt that the spiritual energy contained in this piece of beef was extremely beneficial to them. Not only could it strengthen their bodies, but it could also fill their stomachs. There was nothing better than this. However, just as these small fish were crazily biting there, a huge black shadow suddenly swept up from the bottom of the sea. Some fish that felt something was wrong ran away first, but there were always some fish that were slower to react. These slow fish were destined to become the dinner of other fish, such as Big Dumb. Bang! With a splash, Big Dumb swallowed the whole piece of meat and the fish around it into his stomach. At the same time, he jumped out of the water. Under the light of the setting sun, Jiang Hai, who was sitting on the boat, couldn't help but smile and squint his eyes. He really grew a lot. Looking at Big Dumb, who fell back into the sea and then slowly swam over, Jiang Hai smiled with relief. In fact, among all of Jiang Hai's pets, although Xiao Bai and Little Yellow were close to him, Big Dumb benefited the most. Jiang Hai fed Big Dumb a total of 4 drops of blood and 3 pieces of spiritual energy. It could be said that Jiang Hai made this shark smarter than a dolphin. In addition, he gave it beef with spiritual energy from time to time, so it really grew very fast. After all, Xiao Bai, Xiao Huang, and the others had to appear in front of others. If they caused any trouble, it would be unnecessary. However, Big Fool was in the sea. If Jiang Hai did not allow him to appear in front of humans, then he would not appear. It was that simple. Originally, when he fished it up, it was already an adult. However, with the breakthrough of spiritual energy, it could continue to grow indefinitely. However, in winter, the growth rate was indeed slower. As spring came and the flowers bloomed, Big Idiot's height really shot up very quickly. For example, after a month of not seeing him, this guy had grown by at least 1 meter. This made Jiang Hai feel very gratified. A shark-tiger shark was generally 3 to 3. 4 meters long and weighed only 159 kilograms. However, Big Dumb was already more than 7 meters long and almost 8 meters long. Even if it encountered a great white shark, it would have the advantage in terms of length. After all, not all great white sharks were more than 8 meters long. Most of them were only about 5 meters long, and the best ones were only 6. 4 meters long, which was much shorter than Big Dumb. At the same time, it did not have some problems such as lack of sensitivity, speed, and physical strength because of its growth. One must know that it grew bigger by eating spiritual energy, and its genetic chain had already broken through. Now, Big Dumb weighed about 6 tons and had a mouth full of big teeth, which made people feel cold just by looking at it. Except for the overlord of the sea, the killer whale, it was really not afraid of anyone. Moreover, even if it faced a killer whale, the outcome was still uncertain. One must know that it was much more agile than a killer whale. At the same time, sharks are fish and do not need to take a breath. When a killer whale goes up to take a breath, it will be the time of its defeat. My goodness, it has grown so big. Patting Big Dumb's head, Jiang Hai was very gratified. He didn't know how big this guy would grow in the end, but Jiang Hai understood that if Big Dumb was exposed now, it would probably be world news. While patting Big Dumb's head, Jiang Hai put the meat into the water and prepared to feed it and talk to it about coastal patrol. However, after Big Dumb ate a few pieces first, he held one of them in his mouth and plunged into the sea. Big Dumb, Big Dumb. Looking at Big Dumb swimming quickly into the deep sea, Jiang Hai was stunned. What's going on? Hearing Jiang Hai's call, Big Dumb just swam around in the water, as if to ask Jiang Hai to wait, and then plunged into the deep sea. Looking at it, this made Jiang Hai's open mouth helplessly closed again. Since it asked him to wait, Jiang Hai was ready to wait and see. Just when Jiang Hai was bored, 2 strong fins in the distance quickly approached from afar. Looking at these 2 fins, Jiang Hai was no stranger to them. The first one was his Big Dumb, but the second one was much smaller than the first one. It was almost the same size as Big Dumb's original fin, which made Jiang Hai a little confused. Just when Jiang Hai was a little confused, Big Dumb swam to the side of Jiang Hai's boat, turned around, and was ready to float up again, but the shark behind it didn't think so. It swam to the side of Jiang Hai's boat and directly hit it. With a muffled sound, Jiang Hai's boat was shaken by the shark. Fortunately, this shark itself wasn't big, and Jiang Hai's boat was also assembled with a lot of money, so it was extremely sturdy. If it was an ordinary wooden boat, the frame may be broken at once. Just when Jiang Hai was surprised, the shark spun around and accelerated again to hit Jiang Hai's boat. But this time, it didn't hit, because before it hit, Big Dumb had already rushed over. Without saying anything, it directly hit the side of the shark, directly knocking it out. Sharks can't speak, otherwise, this shark would be depressed to death. Didn't Big Dumb bring it here? Why is he attacking it now? However, because of Big Dump's attack, this shark became a lot more honest. It swam aside obediently and didn't dare to go forward. At this time, Big Dump swam to the side of the boat, leaned his body out, and took the initiative to turn his body over, exposing himself in front of Jiang Hai. After a shark turned over, it will lose consciousness and be slaughtered. It did this to apologize. After all, in its heart, Jiang Hai is the most important master. However, when the shark saw Big Dump's action, it swam faster in an instant. Jiang Hai can feel that it was anxious, but it didn't dare to get close. It could only circle outside. Forget it, what's the situation? Seeing its appearance, Jiang Hai was even more confused. He casually said, not caring whether Big Dump understood or not. Jiang Hai turned it over again. After Big Dump was turned over, it stared at Jiang Hai with its small eyes without eyelids, then swam to the shark over there, and then swam over with the shark. But this time, the shark didn't dare to act rashly, it just kept swimming beside Jiang Hai's boat. It can be seen that it was still a little afraid of Jiang Hai, or to be exact, it was afraid of Big Dump. This is your girlfriend? Looking at the shark that kept circling with Big Dump, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little surprised, then he smiled and asked. He couldn't tell which fish was male and which one was female. However, looking at Big Fool's appearance, it's hard for Jiang Hai not to think in this direction. Although he doesn't know about sharks, Jiang Hai can see that this shark shouldn't be a sand tiger shark. It should be bigger than a sand tiger shark. Isn't it said that all species have reproductive isolation? What's the situation with these two guys? But in any case, it seems that Big Dump is going to be a father soon. With a curious mentality, Jiang Hai deliberately took a few photos of this shark. He planned to go back and ask Edward Anderson. This old fisherman knows much more than Jiang Hai, he should know this kind of shark. Congratulations, congratulations. You're going to spread your wings in my fish farm. But that's good too. My fish farm will have more security guards in the future. Haha. Here, take this piece of meat. Don't attack me next time. Looking at Big Dump's seemingly happy face, Jiang Hai also smiled. After injecting a scale's spiritual energy into a piece of beef, he threw it into the water. Although Big Dump also knew that the spiritual energy was beneficial to it, it didn't snatch it, but let the shark eat it. The shark didn't hesitate and swallowed the beef directly, then it swam faster. Well, it still needs some time to digest. You should get along well with each other. I'm here today to tell you that if you have time in the future, you can help to patrol the fishing ground. If you see any wild animals swimming into my manor from the water, you have to be responsible for intercepting them. If there are any bad guys that you don't know who enter my territory from the sea with weapons, you have to stop them. Patting the head of Big Dump, who was a little anxious, Jiang Hai poured the rest of the beef into the sea, and then said something to it. After that, Jiang Hai left first, and Big Dump, his girlfriend, finished the beef. Although the spiritual energy contained in these beef was less than 1/10,000th of the spiritual energy in Jiang Hai's area, it was still spiritual energy. Eating it will only be better for the body, and it won't be bad. Looking at the dorsal fins of the two sharks constantly drawing circles on the water and finally sinking into the water, Jiang Hai's face also showed a gratified smile. He didn't expect Big Dump to find a companion, but thinking about himself, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. It seems that I have no right to criticize others. Thinking about Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi who were still in the villa, Jiang Hai lowered his head and pondered for a while. He knew the thoughts of these two women. They were not the kind of people who would accept handouts, and most importantly, Jiang Hai didn't want the relationship between them to be defined as a relationship of money. He couldn't give them a promise, but if he just let them go, Jiang Hai was also a little unwilling. Chapter 346. Hi, boss, you're back. Watching the boat return to the dock, Tommy Charles, who was still on the dock and ready to leave, immediately called out to Jiang Hai. Hearing his voice, Jiang Hai smiled and took out a rope from the boat. It was used to fix the boatman and threw it on the dock. After Tommy Charles took the rope, he quickly tied it to the pier. When he was done, Jiang Hai also walked up from the boat with a big lobster. Originally, Jiang Hai didn't want to catch lobsters, but since he was already here, he didn't care. He found that there were more and more lobsters on the seabed recently, and they were getting bigger and bigger. After all, these lobsters had been eating the water plants that Jiang Hai planted with spiritual energy for several months. In the past, when the weather was cold, they didn't grow too long. Recently, when the weather was warm, they grew rapidly, comparable to dashas. Of course, it was the proportion, not the size. Otherwise, if those lobsters were 1 meter long, Jiang Hai would be confused. But at this time, on Jiang Hai's coral reef, there were lobsters with a body length of more than half a meter everywhere. You could almost see them by turning over a few stones. Even without turning over the stones, you could see that these guys were walking on the seabed, faintly resembling the time when the Americans first came here. In addition to the obvious increase in size, Jiang Hai also found that these guys had begun to give birth. After all, animals such as lobsters, crabs, and shrimps, as long as they grew into babies, there would be a lot of them. Hundreds or thousands of them would be at least, although most of these eggs would not grow into small shrimps. However, after eating Jiang Hai's water plants, the survival rate of these small shrimps greatly increased. In addition, the plankton these guys ate also had spiritual energy, so the survival rate of the small shrimps was quite high. Of course, even if they were alive, they would be eaten by fish. Originally, there were only a few crayfish in a nest, but after being nourished by Jiang Hai's spiritual energy, the number of crayfish increased by dozens of times. Now that Jiang Hai dived into the water, he found that there were small shrimp and crab seedlings everywhere on the seabed, and the fish that originally lived on the coral reef were increasing in number and size. He regretted spending money to buy those seedlings. If he had known, he would have only bought seaweed. Of course, this was just Jiang Hai's idea. No matter what world it was, if you want to survive, you must have a food chain. Fortunately, Jiang Hai's food chain was not destroyed. Today, he casually caught a big guy that was about 70 centimeters long. With Jiang Hai's strength, if he didn't hold on to it, he would feel weak. It seemed that tonight, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi would have a good meal again. However, looking at the crayfish that Jiang Hai caught, Tommy Charles and the others didn't care. Crayfish was actually worthless a few decades ago. When Tommy Charles and the others were young, this thing was worthless. Crayfish was called the poor man's chicken. It was said that when the British came to the United States, they didn't see turkey and crayfish. Most people were starved to death. Later, when they saw the Native Americans eat it, they dared to eat it. However, at that time, crayfish was indeed everywhere, especially in Boston. The price of crayfish was the cheapest among all the meat prices. Even chicken was more expensive than this, even if it was turkey. Therefore, for the people in the United States, this crayfish was actually not very delicious. By the way, help me see what kind of shark this is. After Jiang Hai went ashore, he stuffed the crayfish into a bag filled with water that he had prepared beforehand. Crayfish could live well out of water, but big lobsters would die soon after leaving water. In order to eat fresh, Jiang Hai would deliberately put it in a bag every time, so that it could stay fresh for a longer time. After putting the crayfish in, Jiang Hai also handed the phone to Tommy Charles and asked him, "Oh, this is a rat shark, a very annoying shark. Some of them are crazy, and they often inexplicably attack people in fishing boats. Some small fishing boats will hate them, but for larger boats, these guys can't do anything. For example, it can't hit our boat, but even if it is attacked, it almost won't kill people." Glancing at Jiang Hai's phone, Tommy Charles saw what the shark in it was at a glance. For them, it was very easy to distinguish sharks. Although in Jiang Hai's eyes, these sharks almost all look the same. "Oh, then we have to be careful when we go fishing. This shark is also my pet, and she is Big Fool's girlfriend." When Big Fool was still young, Tommy Charles had seen Big Fool before, so he also knew about Big Fool. Now that they heard Jiang Hai's words, they were also stunned. To be honest, they really envied Jiang Hai's ability. He really raised everything. By the way, boss, I heard that our town is going to be developed into a tourist attraction. After instructing Tommy Charles, Jiang Hai was ready to leave, but before he left, Tommy Charles stopped him. Yeah, there is such a thing. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also nodded and looked at him with some doubts. In fact, Jiang Hai's first impression of this Tommy Charles was not very good. Maybe it's because fishermen really don't have to worry about not finding a job, so when he first met him, he was waiting for a good offer. Although after he came here later, he was very good at work, but after all, he had a criminal record, so when Jiang Hai heard his words, he thought he was going to resign. No, boss, I am very satisfied with my current job, really, I swear to God. I asked about this mainly because my wife and the others are in the manor now. In terms of the vegetable field, Philip's wife is mainly in charge. Except for sowing time, they don't need to do anything else. The day before yesterday, they went to town and heard about this, so they inquired about it and learned that you are the main investor, so they asked me to ask if there is any suitable job for them. As soon as he saw Jiang Hai's gaze, Tommy Charles also knew that Jiang Hai had misunderstood and immediately expressed his loyalty. Although the fisherman's income was not small, who would complain about earning more? Tommy Charles and the others all had families. Now that their children were not around, and their wives had nothing to do except for doing some housework, it was indeed a good thing to have a job. Oh, it doesn't matter because I will be responsible for funding to build some villas by the sea for tourists to live in. At that time, there will definitely be a shortage of cleaning staff or management staff in the villas. Although I have handed over the management rights to the town, it is not a problem to put a few people in. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai nodded subconsciously. Indeed, this was not a big problem. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Tommy Charles couldn't help but shout happily. This is indeed a good thing, even if the income is low, it can be considered as subsidizing the family. Hearing his gratitude, Jiang Hai also smiled, put the lobster in the back of the car, sat in the driver's seat and headed to his villa. But when he was walking, a thought suddenly flashed in Jiang Hai's mind. Originally, there were some problems with Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi. If they don't do this job, when the tourism industry here starts, they can come to help, right? At most, he will pay for their expenses at that time. Jiang Hai, who still had some hesitation, suddenly found a direction. Although his feelings for Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi may not be as good as Aphrodite, not to mention the only one who is treated differently by Jiang Hai, Shendy Clive. But if he can keep them by his side, it is not a bad thing, at least they will not suffer. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai stepped on the gas pedal faster and faster. Originally, the road was not far, so Jiang Hai quickly rushed back home. When he returned home, he found that Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi were sitting at the table playing games with Delina and Marion. The game they are playing now is called German Heart Disease, which is a fast reaction game. Jiang Hai also played with them before, but it's just a simple game. Because this game mainly depends on who has faster reaction and mental arithmetic ability. Although Delina and Marion are good, how can they be Jiang Hai's opponent? However, these four people are now playing quite happily. If it was before yesterday, Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi would not be their opponent, but now, after the two of them split some of Jiang Hai's spiritual energy, although their reaction speed is still not as fast as theirs. But with the advantage of being adults, they occasionally win. They were having a lot of fun. Looking at them, Jiang Hai smiled and walked over. He was going to tell them about it. But this matter is better to hide from Delina and Marion. After all, the relationship between the three of them is a bit awkward. It's better not to let the children know, so after Jiang Hai entered the house, he directly said to the four of them. Okay, stop playing, Delina, Marion, you go and call little Huang and the others back, then go and get me some beef, I am going to cook, you two come and help me. Jiang Hai first arranged tasks for Delina and Marian. The two girls are not unfamiliar with this kind of work, so they quickly nodded, packed up their things, and ran away. As for Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshen, although they are curious about why Jiang Hai is looking for them, they still followed in. Let me say this first, I don't know how to cook, I can at most help you. As soon as they entered the kitchen, Feng Yunshen raised both of her hands. I don't know how to cook either. Ai Xiaoxi on the other side is the same, there are not many girls in their generation who can cook. I don't need you to cook, I mainly want to tell you something, our town is going to be developed into a tourist attraction, I have invested in it, so I want to ask if you want to change your job. Chapter 347. Stay here? Stay here and be bullied by you? Dream on, Tisk. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, although Feng Yunshen's eyes were a little wet and her face was a little touched, she still complained. She knew the meaning of Jiang Hai's words. This was the purpose of her coming here. She can already confirm that whether it is her or Ai Xiaoxi, in fact, they have already unknowingly occupied a small position in Jiang Hai's heart. Although the position is not important, it is good news for a man's possessiveness. At least with this layer of relationship, she was in the country. If Qili wanted to touch her again, she would have to consider Jiang Hai's attitude. If it was a few years ago, I would definitely agree, but now, we still need to consider it. You haven't done it yet, right? After it is done, we will give you an answer. Feng Yunshen bit her lips and looked at Ai Xiaoxi, who was a little flustered, and said seriously. At this time, Daliana and Marian also came back from outside, and they also brought Xiao Bai and little Huang. The three of them consciously changed the original topic and began to busy themselves in the kitchen. Not long after, a sumptuous dinner was served on the table. Looking at the food on the table, both Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi were filled with emotions. If Jiang Hai asked them during dinner, they would probably agree. In their view, there are a total of 3 advantages to being around Jiang Hai. The smallest advantage is that Jiang Hai is rich, and the second is that Jiang Hai is very strong, and can completely meet their requirements in that aspect. It is said that women are the most beautiful women, and then they are the most beautiful women. Now, these two girls had the intention to develop in this direction. And the biggest advantage is the food here. Although they have only eaten here for a few days, they are most satisfied with the food here. In addition to Jiang Hai's culinary skills that still need to be improved, the raw materials here are really good. Beef, lobster, mutton, fish, prawns, and crabs. Not to mention these, there were also free-range wild birds and free-range chickens. Other than the fact that there was no pork, this place was simply heaven. Of course, with Jiang Hai's nature, it was impossible for him not to eat pork. He didn't believe in sex, so he also had pork in the cold storage. If he wanted to eat it, he could cut it up at any time. However, the taste was just the taste of ordinary pigs, and it wasn't too outstanding. The two of them patted their stomachs and leaned back in their chairs. The taste of the food was simply too amazing. After packing up, the 5 of them watched TV in the living room for a while. Of course, they weren't watching the live broadcast in the United States. Instead, they connected to the computer and watched a domestic variety show. Before going abroad, Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi liked to watch this show. Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi's English hadn't reached the level where they could understand English TV. Of course, these two girls used to be good in school. If there were subtitles below, they would understand it completely. Without subtitles, they would be confused. This was also a shortcoming of the exam-oriented education in China. The ability to write was very good, but it was mute English. For example, Jiang Hai, he could speak and listen, but he wasn't good at writing. After all, he only learned it in a short period of time. However, fortunately, they had practiced these days. They were better than when they first came. After all, they knew the meaning of those words and the grammar. They just needed to correct the pronunciation and list the words properly. In Jiang Hai's opinion, the best thing for these two girls to do was to be the town's tour guide. They were beautiful and eloquent. They were also Asian beauties. If they really became tour guides, it would be considered a scenic spot, right? However, as they said, the development of the town was just an intention. It was still waiting for the town's people to decide. Just as Jiang Hai was thinking about something, his phone suddenly rang. Jiang Hai picked it up and saw that the caller was none other than Zhang Dihai, Elder Zhang. Little Jiang, do you have time tomorrow? I have solved the transportation channel and warehouse here. Do you think it's okay to kill the cattle tomorrow? As soon as the phone was picked up, Elder Zhang's voice sounded from the other side of the phone. Oh, no problem. When will you come over? Just now, Luo Binsi had already told Jiang Hai that in these 2 days, Elder Zhang and Pra Walton should come over to pull the cattle, so Jiang Hai was already mentally prepared and agreed. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We have already contacted the car and the slaughterhouse. When you come over, just pick the cattle directly. Hearing that Jiang Hai agreed, Zhang Dihai also smiled and said, doing business with Jiang Hai is the most straightforward and easy to talk to. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, Jiang Hai hung up the phone. After he hung up the phone, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi also looked at him. Are you going to sell cattle tomorrow? Just now, Jiang Hai and Elder Zhang spoke Chinese, so both of them understood. Yes, tomorrow you will shoot. Let Delina and Marian follow you. If you can't do it well, ask Aphrodite to come over and help. You are all women. It's not bad for you to be interpreters. Hearing Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi's words, Jiang Hai knew that they still had work to do, but his own business was much more important than theirs. So Jiang Hai arranged people for them. In fact, Delina and Marian have always been curious about Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan's work. After all, which girl doesn't dream of being a model? And these two women know that they are models. Although they are models of Huaxia, it doesn't prevent them from feeling and understanding the industry, so when they heard Jiang Hai's words, the two little girls immediately nodded. Looking at their appearance, Jiang Hai also gently rubbed their heads. The reason why Jiang Hai let Delina and Marian go was mainly because he didn't feel comfortable letting other men go. Fortunately, there are a lot of women in the manor, so Jiang Hai is still very relieved. After everything was arranged, the 5 of them went upstairs to sleep, but they waited until 9 o'clock in the evening. Jiang Hai's door opened, and a figure quietly slipped into Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi's room. There is no need to say what he is going to do. The two of them didn't come out of the room. For them, there is no need to say anything more. In the blink of an eye, the next day arrived. When Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan woke up, not only did they feel refreshed, they thought that it was because of love, but in fact, it was indeed related to love. But most importantly, it was the funds that Jiang Hai had sent to them that played a role. Jiang Hai's blood had a miraculous effect. The spiritual qi inside was very rich. Although it wasn't as good as blood, it still had some effect. It was enough to make them immune to all kinds of diseases and feel refreshed. But when the two of them got up, they didn't see Jiang Hai. When they went downstairs, they learned from Delina that Jiang Hai had gone to the cowshed. At this time, they remembered that Jiang Hai was going to sell cows today, so they were going to take a look first, and then go to shoot. After they put on their clothes, packed their things, and ate breakfast, they followed Delina and Marian to the winery. Soon they saw Jiang Hai, who was busy in the distance, and several huge flatbed trailers. Looking at the large Angus cows being transported on the flatbed trailers, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan saw it for the first time. Wow, Jiang Hai's cows are so strong. How many cows are they transporting? Looking at the cows entering the flatbed trailers, Ai Xiaoxi said with some surprise. Indeed, in her opinion, Jiang Hai's cows are indeed very strong. It should be 200 cows today. This time, the old man next to Jiang Hai came back to buy the cows. He ordered a total of 2,000 cows. Today, he will transport 10% of them to the officially designated slaughterhouse. Hearing her words, Delina and Marion stayed here all day, so they were naturally the most familiar with it, so they took the initiative to introduce it to them. 200 cows is so much, then Jiang Hai will make a lot of money today. Hearing the words of Delina and Marion, Feng Yunshan also looked into the distance. She knew that this is Jiang Hai's main income, so she was really a little excited. Of course, there will be a lot. In my hometown, there are people who sell cows. A cow is worth 20,000 or 30,000 yuan. Beef cows like this are much cheaper, but they are so strong, they are estimated to be worth more than 10,000 yuan. Hearing her words, Ai Xiaoxi also said with a serious face. Although Ai Xiaoxi's home is not in the countryside, it is almost the same as the countryside. It is somewhat like the location of the urban-rural junction. Her family lives in a town, and her hometown is in the countryside. Naturally, she will go back there in normal times, so she really has some understanding of the market. More than 10,000 yuan? Then 2,000 cows, isn't that 20 million yuan? There are more than 20,000 cows here. Wow, Jiang Hai can make 200 million yuan a year? It's really not an ordinary profit. Hearing Ai Xiaoxi's words, Feng Yunshan was also a little surprised. Originally, she didn't know much about Jiang Hai's wealth. Now it seems that Jiang Hai is really rich. He can make 200 million yuan a year? Amazing. It's not calculated like that. The cows here are specially trained, so the price of a cow is not 10,000 yuan, but about 150,000 yuan. Hearing the words of the two, Marion interrupted them with a serious face. 150,000 yuan? My God, those 20,000 cows, aren't they worth 3 billion yuan? Originally, they thought that it was too much, but now it seems that it is really too little. Raising cows can make 3 billion yuan a year, how can they live? Yes, Jiang said that it's about $3 billion, but we have to keep the cows to give birth to calves, so we're only selling the bulls, so it's about $1.5 billion. Hearing her shocked words, Daliana calmly added another stab to her heart. It's actually USD? Oh my God. $1.5 billion? How much is that? Hearing Delina's words, Feng Yunshan was already a little panicked. This level of wealth is something she never thought of before, and she didn't dare to think of it all. Chapter 348. Just when Feng Yunshan felt that she couldn't figure it out, Ai Xiaoxi behind her had already calculated a number with her mobile phone. 7 billion. Well, it seems that we have indeed hooked up with a big shot. Looking at the numbers on the phone, Feng Yunshan felt that his tongue was a little tied. For an ordinary person, billions or even tens of billions of funds were indeed a bit too much. How can there be so much? Jiang Fei still has to pay taxes. In the end, it would be good if there is about 800 million left in his hands. Looking at Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi's dumbfounded expressions, Daliana also laughed. Sigh, this evil American tax. Hearing that nearly half of the tax would be paid, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan were stunned for a moment, then sighed, as if the $700 million were taken out from their pockets. But in any case, they had a preliminary understanding of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai was very rich, very rich. His wealth was even beyond their imagination. The two women who originally had some thoughts about Jiang Hai didn't know how to face him at this time. It was not easy to make up their minds. They originally thought that the least benefit was money, but it turned out to be so much. Because they knew that Jiang Hai was busy with such a big business, the two women decided not to disturb Jiang Hai. Instead, they went straight to the winery, because they were going to shoot here today. In order to avoid being seen by others, Jiang Hai deliberately gave Dulce Gerard and the others a day off today. Everyone had a rest. Now the grapes were only in the growing period, so they didn't have to look at them all day long. In the morning, after the two people in charge came to take a look, Dulles Gerard and Connor Murphy, this pair of master and disciple, went to town. It was said that they went to Sheit Clive's house as guests. Of course, they knew very well what could be said and what could not. They naturally also knew that Clive's eldest daughter was interested in Jiang Hai, so they wouldn't say anything else. After all, he was their boss. When Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi arrived at the winery, there was already a girl waiting for them there. This girl was none other than Aphrodite Arnold. Last night, after Delina and Marion found out that they were going to help today, they were worried that they wouldn't be able to do a good job, so they specially called Aphrodite at night. In fact, since the day Jiang Hai took Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi around the winery, Aphrodite's woman's sixth sense told her that these two women must be related to Jiang Hai. Sure enough, when she asked yesterday, Delina and Mary also said that these two women should have had sex with Jiang Hai. Aphrodite was not jealous. After learning about this matter, Delina and Mary, Aphrodite, these two women's. After learning about this matter, Delina and Mary, Aphrodite was that these two women and Jiang. However, she was a little envious. She envied them for being able to do something with Jiang Hai. This was what she dreamed of. So when she heard that Delina and Marion needed her help, she immediately came over. When she saw Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi up close, she couldn't help but secretly compare them. The skin of Asians is indeed better than that of Westerners. Their pores are smaller, their limbs are slender, giving people a sense of protection. Although it doesn't conform to the aesthetic view of the Americans still prioritize fat. Thinking about the famous American socialite, nicknamed sister-in-law, Kim Kardashian, she understood that the Americans' aesthetic is indeed different from that of Hua Xia. Looking at herself, Aphrodite is actually not bad. However, her limbs are indeed much thicker than these two women, but her certain parts are also much more developed than these two women. Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi naturally felt Aphrodite's gaze, but they didn't say anything. Soon, the five of them entered into work mode and began to take photos. At this time, Jiang Hai was at the cowshed, looking at Zhang Dihai, who just finished picking out the cows from the cowshed. I have to admit, your cows are the least smelly ones I've ever seen. While taking off his mask, Zhang Dihai said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai shrugged. There's no way he can tell the secret. I've picked 200 cows, this is the first batch. If the market's response is good, I'll come back to pick the second batch within this month. But looking at your cows, I think the 2,000 cows I asked for may be a bit too little. Looking at Jiang Hai, old Zhang sighed. It seems that he was really too careful in the beginning. If he directly bought all the cows, TSK. Let's wait until next year. This year's cows won't sell well, I'm going to raise more next year. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled. Indeed, although Jiang Hai's most important cheat is the scales on his body, ever since he rose to level 2, he also has some confidence. Fishing for treasures in the deep sea is actually more profitable than raising cows, but he won't forget that there are also risks. Compared to fishing for treasures, it's more convenient to raise cows. The most important thing is to ensure a stable harvest. Oh. How many more do you want to raise? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, old Zhang's eyes lit up. I'll raise about 5,000 more. Right now, the manor has sold more than 10,000 bulls, and there are still more than 8,000 cows left. In the past few months, the cows have given birth to about 2,000 calves. If I raise another 5,000 bulls, I'll have a total of 25,000. Next year, there will be 17,000 bulls ready for slaughter. That's not bad. Hearing old Zhang's words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. Increasing the number of beef cows by 70% is indeed a lot. Originally, according to Luo Binxi's words, they still want to maintain the status quo. After all, this pasture is not that big. With more than 20,000 acres of land, it's more than enough to raise more than 20,000 cows. If it wasn't because Jiang Hai's grass has spiritual energy, it grows very fast and there's no need to change fields, it would be more troublesome to raise them. However, it's also because Jiang Hai's pasture has spiritual energy, so Jiang Hai can raise twice as many cows as before. Jiang Hai's pasture has about 40,000 cows, now he can raise 80,000 cows. However, 80,000 cows will require more manpower and more cow sheets. Jiang Hai doesn't want his living area to smell like cow dung. He had come here mainly to enjoy himself, not to smell the stench. Only a little more, 5,000 cows, maybe I can eat it all by myself next year. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, old Zhang couldn't help but laugh. He has great confidence in Jiang Hai's beef. While the two of them were chatting and laughing, the workers on the other side had also picked out 200 bulls and drove them into the trailer. With an order, Jiang Hai also drove a car with Luo Binsi and Burke Dollar, following the big truck in front of them out of the manor. Now they are going to the slaughterhouse. Although Jiang Hai sells whole cows, live cows, he doesn't sell them at the price of a whole cow. After all, a whole cow can't be sold at a high price. After all, the buyer has to bear the risk. If there's no marbling after a cut, they will suffer a great loss. Jiang Hai sells the meat directly. The quality of the meat is different, so the price is different. In this way, Jiang Hai takes a lot of risk, but he has confidence in his cows, so they need to follow him to the slaughterhouse to calculate all the prices. This time, Old Zhang's slaughterhouse was located in the suburbs of Boston. This slaughterhouse could be considered as the largest slaughterhouse in the Boston area. This slaughterhouse occupied the largest area, with a total of more than 800 workers and 120 workshops for slaughtering. Not only did they slaughter cows, pigs, sheep, and other livestock, but they also had more than 100 professional workers for slaughtering cows. Jiang Hai also knew about this company before. When they arrived, they found that there are already a lot of cars outside waiting to be slaughtered. Many of them are companies that Jiang Hai is familiar with, such as Cartwright Company. This company, which has a grudge against him, lost a lot of face after this New York beef show. They didn't have anything to do with the top three, which has caused a lot of impact on their business. Many private manor owners had given up on working with them, and many Western restaurants no longer use their cows. Originally, this competition didn't have such a big impact on them. The most important thing is that after the competition, some people inquired about the sales of Jiang Hai's beef. After knowing that Jiang Hai doesn't only sell beef, those Western restaurants still want to buy their beef. But at the same time, Zhang Dihai's Haishang supermarket and Pra Walton's Walmart announced that they got authorization. Since this kind of beef is also sold, they don't need to buy Cartwright Company's beef. Now, when they look at Jiang Hai's beef in front of them, which is more than one size bigger than their own, these companies have no other choice but to sigh helplessly. The only thing that comforts them is that Jiang Hai doesn't raise a lot of cows. More than 10,000 cows, which is a few million pounds of meat, will be divided into a year's sales. Although the top of the food industry in the United States can't be protected, the middle and bottom are still under their control. Mr. Zhang has already informed them a long time ago. When the cars carrying the cows arrived at the gate, there are already people here to meet them. Then the cows are sent to the slaughterhouse, and the next step is to slaughter them. Although they were not slaughtered by machines, these people's handiwork was very fast. If 5 people killed 1 cow, 100 workers could kill 20 cows in an instant. After killing the cows, the machines and other workers would be responsible for cutting the cows. In about half an hour, they could finish a round of slaughter. Then, Jiang Hai's people and Old Zhang's people would work together to calculate the quality and price of the beef produced in each section. When the cows are slaughtered, the exclamations didn't stop. Almost every time the cow's skin is peeled, the workers here will subconsciously exclaim, "The quality of the beef is really good." Chapter 349. I feel more and more that the beef I ordered is too little. Are your cows for sale? Looking at the forms sent by his subordinates from time to time, Elder Zhang's sigh became more obvious. He couldn't help but glance at Jiang Hai next to him and said half-jokingly. He knew that people who sold cattle would almost never sell cows. Breeding cattle would change every 1 or 2 years, but cows would not. Because a cow can give birth to 7 to 10 children in a lifetime, that is to say, 1 cow can be exchanged for 10 cows. Although cows that have given birth to 10 children have no value to be sold, most manor owners will kill them for meat or raise them until they are old. People like Jiang Hai will probably raise them until they are old. After all, they have contributed to the manor. However, before the cows give birth to 10 children, Jiang Hai will not agree to sell robins. Most importantly, Jiang Hai isn't stupid. These heifers are eating his grass. When the time comes, the quality of the calves they give birth to will be higher. So when he heard Jiang Hai's words, he just smiled. Elder Zhang naturally understands this. This sentence is just a joke. According to the written on the form, Jiang Hai and Elder Zhang also calculated the price of these cows in their hearts. Although these cows had been reared for more than a month, their quality was indeed slightly worse than when they were at the exhibition. If Jiang Hai's cow at the exhibition is worth more than $160,000, then the price of this cow is basically between $140,000 and $150,000. The middle value is about $147,000 per cow. Jiang Hai is quite satisfied with this price, and Elder Zhang is even more satisfied. There are many rich Chinese in the United States. Although they prefer to save money, if they have good things, they will not be stingy, especially when it comes to food. Huaxia has a long history of 5,000 years. In fact, most of the main achievements are focused on food. Every dynasty will have a kind of representative food. Most Huaxia people are actually quite willing to eat delicious food. After Elder Zhang released that he has the best beef in the world, most of the first batch of beef has been ordered. Now looking at these things, he is really emotional. This time you really made a lot of money. Putting away the report in front of him, Elder Zhang was a little speechless. And Jiang Hai listened to his words, chuckled, and said with a smile, same. Indeed, he made a lot of money this time. The best quality beef he got from Jiang Hai was $400 per pound, and he sold it for at least $480. After deducting the transportation and other miscellaneous expenses, he paid at least $75 per pound of beef. There are 200 cows here, and each of them is 100 kilograms, which is more than 40,000 pounds. 75 multiplied by 40,000, he made more than $3 million in the first batch of beef. What is there to be dissatisfied with? It should be known that the net profit of Xishang supermarket is only tens of millions a year, and this is equal to the sales of a month. Most importantly, there are still 1,800 cows. Selling 2,000 cows this year, that is more than $30 million, not including the price of other meat. Just the top quality beef is more than 30 million net profit. Elder Zhang still feels that he ordered too little. As more and more cows are killed, the smiles on Jiang Hai and Elder Zhang's faces become more and more obvious. Just like Jiang Hai said, earning money together was the most important thing. Everyone earning money together was the way to go in the long run. While Jiang Hai is making a lot of money here, time is also passing by. If he could kill 20 cows in half an hour, it would only take him 5 hours to kill 200 cows, and that was including the time he would take for lunch. At 3:00 in the afternoon, the 200 cows are all slaughtered. Elder Zhang took away the beef, and Jiang Hai sold the hides directly to the slaughterhouse. These slaughterhouses have the connections of shell companies, so they can be sold directly. Moreover, the quality of Jiang Hai's beef is indeed quite good. Just for the hides, the boss of the slaughterhouse gave Jiang Hai $1.6 million, which is $800 per hide. This is already quite good, and is the same price as the best quality hides. But for Jiang Hai, $1.6 million is just a drop in the ocean. He will take it if it's given, and he won't care too much if it's not given. Since he can sell it now, he won't hold back. But if there's one thing that Jiang Hai feels is a pity, it's that the cows went into the water. To be honest, in Jiang Hai's eyes, the cow's water is good, but it's a pity that foreigners don't eat cow's water except for foie gras, so these things can only be thrown away to benefit the rats and wild dogs. After all the meat is loaded into the truck, Elder Zhang didn't say much to Jiang Hai, and directly transferred the full payment of the 200 cows to Jiang Hai. The average price of the 200 cows is $147,842. $7. Jiang Hai erased the 42. 7, so it's $147,800 per cow. The 200 cows alone are $59.56 million. Although it doesn't exceed $100 million, don't forget that this is only the first batch. And Elder Zhang didn't take most of it. According to Pra Walton, the first batch of meat she took in 2 days is 1,000 cows, so the price will definitely exceed $100 million. Jiang Hai is quite satisfied with the beef business. According to Hua Xia's rules, the business is done. Naturally, they have to have a meal. Jiang Hai doesn't treat Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi as outsiders, so he called them and told them to make the food themselves. He followed Elder Zhang to his house for a drink, along with Robbins. Burkdollar returned to the manor first to tell everyone the good news. Because in addition to making money for himself, Jiang Hai didn't let his workers suffer losses this time. Including the money from selling the hides, Jiang Hai earned a total of $36 million. He took $30 million, and the extra $36 million was divided equally among the 5 cowboys. This way, each person can get $272,000. For the cowboys, this is a huge sum of money. Burkdollar was ready to go back and tell everyone about it. This is also to calm these people down. Working for Jiang Hai, it is necessary to make money. When the news came back to the manor, some of the cowboys who were envious of the fishermen's money instantly calmed down. This time, it is the fishermen's turn to be envious of them. But whether they are fishermen or cowboys, they all know that as long as they work for Jiang Hai will not forget them. Among other things, they will definitely make more money than before. While the whole manor is celebrating, Jiang Hai is going to Elder Zhang's house for a drink. On the other side, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan also finished their photo shoot for the day. When Burkdollar came back, they couldn't help but be shocked by the news. First, they were shocked that Jiang Hai's business is really so big. More than $30 million, which is close to $200 million. In just one day, Jiang Hai earned $200 million. The rich people in this world really don't take money seriously. Another shocking thing is that Jiang Hai is too good to these workers. He gave each of them $272,000 in dividends from the cattle. My God, $272,000, which is $77 million. Thinking about the money they worked so hard to earn, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi really have the impulse to agree with Jiang Hai's idea. But even if they want to agree, they have to wait for Jiang Hai to come back. Now, they have to think about what to eat for dinner. But fortunately, Aphrodite, who helped them today, took the initiative to say that she can help them prepare dinner after knowing that they have nothing to eat. This also made them very grateful. So after everyone packed up their things, they walked in the direction of the villa together. Unknowingly, Delina and Marian walked to the front, while Aphrodite deliberately walked behind with Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan. The 2 girls looked at Aphrodite and knew that Aphrodite must have something to talk to them about. I want to trouble you with something. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Aphrodite to deliberately say to the 2 girls. Because Aphrodite spoke very slowly, the 2 girls could still understand. Say it, we'll see if we can help. After all, this girl helped them today and even wanted to cook for them, so Feng Yunshan couldn't say anything. She smiled and looked at Aphrodite. I know that you have already done that with the boss. I don't have any other intentions, I just support the boss in doing this. Sigh, that's not right. Anyway, I want to give myself to the boss. I also want to do the same thing as the boss, but the boss always ignores me, so I want to trouble you. Can you teach me how to do it? Aphrodite's face couldn't help but redden as she stuttered her words. Strictly speaking, they should be love rivals, right? Asking her love rival for advice was indeed a little hard to say, but Aphrodite was already a little desperate. What? Hearing Aphrodite's words, Feng Yunshin and Ai Xiaoxi on the other side were also stunned. Can this be done? The two girls looked at each other, then Ai Xiaoxi seemed to have thought of something. She blushed and looked to the side. She didn't comment on this matter. On the other hand, Feng Yunshin looked at Aphrodite speechlessly. This kind of thing works. Do you think you're filming a melodramatic TV series? Cough. My situation was different from yours. I used to have a hard time. It was the boss who saved me, gave me a job, gave me a new life, and cured my throat. To me, the boss is my everything, so. Looking at Feng Yunshin's puzzled gaze, Aphrodite didn't know how to explain and could only speak slowly. If you want to make Jiang Hai fall in love with you, then I'm sorry, I can't help because he doesn't love me. But if you just want to do that with Jiang Hai, it's easy. Aphrodite took a few deep breaths, calmed her mind, and said hesitantly. I don't expect the boss to fall in love with me. How could the boss fall in love with me? I just want to do that with him. Hearing Zhang Yunshin's words, Aphrodite immediately said. To her, that was enough. Chapter 350. Boss, be careful. Looking at Jiang Hai who was walking towards his villa, Luo Binci couldn't help but worry. No, it's okay. Don't worry. I parked the car. You can go back. Don't forget, we still have mountain lions. Be careful when you leave. Waving to Luo Binci, Jiang Hai said with a strong spirit. The boss is really, he doesn't refuse anyone. But the boss can really drink. He can still go home in this situation. Amazing. Looking at Jiang Hai's swaying figure, Luo Binci, who was in the car, couldn't help but smile. After parking the car, he walked towards his villa, and Jiang Hai had already returned to his villa. As soon as he returned to the villa, Jiang Hai, who seemed to be able to walk, suddenly felt dizzy and almost fell. But fortunately, his skills were there. Even if his reaction was slow because of drinking, he still tenaciously supported himself with his hand. He didn't fall completely, but his hand hurt a little. Then he patted his head and went back to the sofa in the living room in a daze. He fell there helplessly. Today was the day Jiang Hai sold cattle. After selling the cattle, he got more than 30 million. Jiang Hai was very happy, to be honest. After all, this was the first time the manor was officially profitable. Then, in order to celebrate this matter, Elder Zhang couldn't help but propose to go to his place for a drink. Jiang Hai naturally wouldn't refuse. After all, the conversation between Huaxia people was more about the dinner table. Originally, he thought that an old man couldn't outdrink him. But later, Jiang Hai found that he was thinking too much. Indeed, the old man couldn't outdrink him, but it didn't mean that he wouldn't ask for outside help, such as his eldest son and second son. Now, most of his store's matters were handed over to his eldest son to handle. Today was such a big event, so his eldest son naturally came. At the same time, his second son also came. Because Jiang Hai was the main guest, and someone had to drive, Jiang Hai didn't let Luo Binci drink. He thought that with his physical fitness twice that of a human, how could he not take down 3 people? As it turned out, he was indeed overthinking things. If it was a fight, not to mention the 3 of them, even if there were 3 or 30 of them, they still might not be Jiang Hai's match. However, when it came to drinking, one had to rely on one's innate ability to drink. Jiang Hai's alcohol tolerance was average. He could drink half a liter of white wine and 8 bottles of beer. It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't too little either. He could drink a little, but he couldn't drink a lot. In addition, no one usually accompanied him to drink, and he didn't want to drink, so he didn't practice here. Even if it was twice the amount, Jiang Hai could only drink half a liter of white wine and 16 bottles of beer, that's all. But today, Jiang Hai drank more than that. He drank white wine today, which was also soaked in wine. The wine was the kind he got from old Zhang last time. It was soaked in deer penis, snake, deer blood, ginseng, wolfberry, ganoderma, deer antler, clam, and so on. After soaking in the wine, the degree didn't decrease, but increased. This white wine was almost 65 degrees, and it could be used as alcohol if it was higher. Jiang Hai drank almost 2.5 liters today, which was already over the limit, but the 3 people from the Zhang family also fell down. Finally, after saying goodbye to old Zhang's second daughter-in-law, Jiang Hai came back by car. On the way, he had already vomited, but after vomiting, although he no longer felt nauseous, he felt even dizzier. It wasn't easy to make it home, but when he laid down on the sofa, he couldn't take it anymore and let out a few long breaths. Jiang Hai wanted to sleep now, but the problem was that he couldn't. People who drank too much were like this. Although the headache was terrible, they couldn't sleep. Moreover, when he moved, his whole body hurt. After about an hour, Jiang Hai felt that his head was a little clearer. He slowly sat up from the sofa and went to the kitchen to drink a big glass of water. Then, he went to the bathroom and slowly climbed to the second floor. Today, he didn't have the mood or energy to look for Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi, so he went straight to his room. But when he opened the door, he was stunned for a moment because Xiao Bai, Little Huang, Dai Teeth, and Qiu Qiu, who were supposed to be sleeping in the room, weren't there. Instead, there was a blonde beauty in sexy pajamas lying on his bed. Jiang Hai fixed his eyes on the person lying on his bed. It was none other than Aphrodite Arnold. What's going on? Did I enter the wrong room? Muttering in a low voice, Jiang Hai glanced at the layout of the room. There was no mistake, this was indeed his home. But why was she sleeping here? You're finally back. Just as Jiang Hai was puzzled, Aphrodite, who had already fallen asleep on the bed, was awakened by the sound of Jiang Hai opening the door. She slowly opened her eyes and gave Jiang Hai a somewhat reproachful look. You're sleeping here? Okay, I'll go sleep in another room. Seeing that Aphrodite had woken up, Jiang Hai smiled apologetically and was about to leave, but before he could, Aphrodite had already jumped off the bed and grabbed Jiang Hai. Don't go, if you leave, I'll have come in vain. Listening to Aphrodite's words, Jiang Hai's originally somewhat confused mind suddenly became clear. A girl dressed like this appeared on your bed in the middle of the night, who would believe that she didn't have any ulterior motives? Aphrodite, don't make trouble, I still have to go to sleep, you know I can't give you any promises. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai smiled and prepared to go out, his mouth also muttering in a low voice. Who wants your promises? I want you. Seeing her like this, Jiang Hai was also shocked. One must know, he also hadn't been to that place before. That place, forget it. Pushing Aphrodite's back, Jiang Hai said somewhat worriedly. Don't worry, it's a different feeling from before. But it's also very comfortable. It's not easy to have this kind of opportunity. If I don't give it all to you, I'll also be very troubled. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Aphrodite's head turned slightly and smiled at Jiang Hai. While Jiang Hai was lost in thought, she also sat down heavily. Sure enough, just as she said, it was indeed a different feeling. Feeling Aphrodite's crazed devotion, Jiang Hai didn't know what to say for a moment. His initial fear and thoughts had long since disappeared. Sometimes, men were like this. When they were begging for something, they were like dogs. After they were done, they despised people for being ugly. Now that something had taken over their minds, how could they still care about that? What's more, don't forget that the alcohol Jiang Hai drank tonight was soaked in something that could kill. About half an hour later, Jiang Hai regained the initiative. Since she was like a moth drawn to a flame, and so unhesitatingly threw herself at him, Jiang Hai also couldn't completely avoid her. Since she was already mentally prepared, then he would fulfill her wish. Chapter 351. Seeing Prawalton getting out of the car, Jiang Hai deliberately looked behind her and asked, "You're the only one who came today." "What? Do you want to see Selena?" Beg me, I'll bring her next time. But speaking of which, your resources here are so good, you don't have to give them to me. It's a pity to leave them here." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton walked over with a smirk and said to Jiang Hai. It can be seen that she is still very open in front of Jiang Hai. "I'm too lazy to care about you. Let's go and pick the cows." Looking at Prawalton, who was only a dozen centimeters away from him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but wave his hand. He can't control this female attacker. It's better to go look at the cows. This is the main problem. Prawalton looked at Jiang Hai's back and curled her lips. Men, they are all lecherous but don't have the guts, including the man in front of her. That's why men are unreliable. But today, she didn't come here to play. She still has business to do. With a wave of her hand, Prawalton led her team to the cowshed. Their workload today is not small. They have to pick 1,000 cows. Today is the third day after Zhang Dihai, Mr. Zhang, finished picking the cows. Jiang Hai spent the day at home drinking. Of course, Jiang Hai regretted what happened the night before yesterday when he woke up in the morning, but what's the use of regretting? What's done is done, so he can only use half of his spirit energy to make the swelling go down. After that, he awkwardly went downstairs to prepare breakfast for Aphrodite. But when he was eating in the morning, Jiang Hai found that Aphrodite's attitude towards him hasn't changed much. She is still the same as before. Just like she said, she doesn't ask for anything else. She can stay the same as before. She just wants to sleep with Jiang Hai, that's all. Such a distance made Jiang Hai feel both fortunate and pressured. Most of the pressure came from the bottom of his heart. Was he becoming more and more of a jerk? Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi obviously knew about this, but they didn't seem to care. After resting for half a day yesterday, Jiang Hai took pictures of Ai Xiaoxi in the bathtub at noon. After that, Jiang Hai went to clean up the swimming pool, because they still needed to take pictures here. He brushed the swimming pool and put it in the seawater. However, because the swimming pool was very big and Jiang Hai didn't want to trouble others, he still did it himself for the whole afternoon. At night, Aphrodite did not come. It was still Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi. Jiang Hai found that although it had only been a few days, he seemed to have gotten used to having women around him. What if Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi left? Aphrodite? No, one mistake like that was enough. If there were more, Jiang Hai was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on. With the three of them together, it was naturally another battle. This morning, Jiang Hai's arm was still a little sore. But today, no matter how sore it was, he had to come out. Because today was the day Prawalton came to pull the cows. On the other side, Feng Yunshen and the others had already gone to the swimming pool to shoot. Aphrodite was their chief assistant. Obviously, after that night's experience, the three women had a lot to talk about. However, it was all behind Delina and Marian's back. Now was not the time for them to talk about these things. This made the two girls feel like they were being excluded. Ignoring them, Jiang Hai naturally couldn't choose 1,000 cows as quickly as the day before yesterday. Prawalton obviously wasn't the kind of person who would choose in person like Mr. Zhang, so the two of them chatted in front of the cowshed. Then Prawalton found that Jiang Hai seemed to know a little about everything, which surprised her. However, Jiang Hai couldn't say that he gained his knowledge after reading a novel. In addition to the love and hatred, there were also some solid facts in the novel, such as astronomy, geography, literature, and so on. It was indeed very scary. Although the number of cows they picked was 5 times more than Mr. Zhang's, Pula Walton brought a lot of people with him. Before noon, all the cows were picked and loaded. They went to a slaughterhouse that was bigger than Mr. Zhang's last time. The people there had already prepared to slaughter the cows overnight, then load them up and transport them to the world. Yes, Pra Walton was not as stingy as Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang still had some stores in the United States. However, it was not possible in Europe, unlike Pra Walton, who had stores all over the world. Of course, Jiang Hai couldn't send meat to every country. He mainly operated in the United States and Europe. Oceania was more self-sufficient, and no one bought meat from Africa. In Asia, whether it was Japan or Korea, they all had their own livestock. One could be said to be the current number one in the world, while the other could be said to have always thought of himself as the number one in the world. Ordinary American beef could be sent in, but it was a big problem to send in such high-grade beef. As for the biggest market, Huaxia, sorry. First, Chile was there. Second, Huaxia didn't allow the import of American beef for sale. This was also a kind of protection for local beef. Otherwise, with the price of American beef, Huaxia's livestock might have gone bankrupt long ago. This time, Jiang Hai didn't keep watch. He came back after 8:00 in the evening. He left Robbins Garcia and Burke Dollar there to watch. With the $270,000 that Jiang Hai had rewarded them, the cowboys were all very enthusiastic. Now, the cowboys in the manor seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Even Bell made an extra round of patrols during his usual days. Because the cows used to belong to Jiang Hai, they now had a close relationship with him. They didn't come back until noon the next day with a pile of reports. Then, Jiang Hai and Pra Walton made a phone call. After the call, $151 million was transferred into Jiang Hai's account. $147 million was cow's money, and the $4 million was cow's hide money. Jiang Hai really didn't think that cow's hide would be so valuable. This time, Jiang Hai didn't give a bonus. After all, the money was his. However, Robbins Burke and Burke gave him $10,000 each. This was the money for overtime. The boss who paid the most overtime in the world was probably Jiang Hai. After putting all the money into his American Express black card, Jiang Hai left with Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi. Now, they were going to take photos of the plane. Of course, this time, Jiang Hai was just a driver. Recently, they had been getting along well with Aphrodite. She had already taken his job. Jiang Hai didn't care about this. It was good to save him some trouble. Today, he had already greeted Bell and Mullen Rupert. When they drove to the small airport, Bell and Mullen Rupert immediately came out. They were cleaning the hangar just now. Otherwise, although there was a plane, the effect wouldn't be very good. Thank you for your hard work. Go in and take photos. Nodding to the two, Jiang Hai said with a smile. People say that people are in high spirits when they are happy. Now that Jiang Hai was making money and happy, he had no reason to be sad. Boss, it's almost done. You can go take a look. We'll go back first. Seeing Jiang Hai and the others walking over, Bell chuckled and said to Jiang Hai. Because Jiang Hai gave them half a day off in the afternoon, they can drink in the villa or go to the town to have fun. After all, young people like Bell are still in high demand. They can't only rely on little left and little right. Especially the most important thing, Jiang Hai just gave him a large sum of money. He now feels like something is scratching his heart, and he can't wait to leave. Hey, Bell, don't be in a hurry to leave. But just as he was about to leave, Jiang Hai suddenly stopped him. Is there anything else? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bell couldn't help but stop and ask with some doubts. You guys go ahead, I have a few words to say to Bell. Seeing that not only Bell stopped, but even Feng Yunshen and Daliana also stopped, Jiang Hai said to them first, then walked to Bell's side. Bell, your boss is now considered to have some assets. As the old saying goes, don't be afraid of thieves stealing, but be afraid of thieves thinking about you. You came from the Triangle State. Do you know any reliable people who can protect me? Looking at Bell, Jiang Hai asked him in a low voice. In his opinion, finding a bodyguard is not a glorious thing. Yes, me. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bell couldn't help but nod, then patted himself happily. He has such confidence. When it comes to these skills, he is definitely world-class. I know you are good, but you can keep an eye on me 24 hours a day. Besides, you also have to fly a plane and herd cattle, I mean professional. Glancing at Bell, Jiang Hai knew that this guy is not serious, so he couldn't help but be a little serious. Oh, boss, to be honest, if you want to find some soldiers, I have a lot of ways, but soldiers are more obedient to the government. If you want to find some people who can protect your safety and are loyal to you, even in the Triangle State, there are no such people, and I don't have any friends. Think about it, if I had a friend, I wouldn't have been kicked out. As far as I know, in the entire Triangle State, I am the only freak. Hearing Jiang Hai's serious words, Bell shrugged helplessly. It's not that he doesn't want to introduce people to Jiang Hai, but he really doesn't know who to introduce. Look at what you're doing. But this isn't the way to go. I need to have some guards around me. Jiang Hai listened to Bell's words and couldn't help but scratch his head. This guy is really unlucky, but thinking about his own assets, he can't rest assured if he doesn't hire a few people. Boss, it's a bit difficult for you to find people who are completely trustworthy, but I know a place where the bodyguards are very good. Chapter 352. Los Angeles, California. It was the second largest city in the United States, the City of Angels, and the Holy Land of Celebrities. Besides San Francisco, it was also the second largest Chinese city in the United States. A large part of the Chinese in the United States were actually Huaxia workers brought over during the development of the western part of the United States. Although they came to this foreign country as pigs, they were treated as pigs. Although they suffered from the supercilious looks of the Americans and the unequal racial policies, they still survived tenaciously. They became the third largest force in the United States. Besides the white and black people, the Huaxia people were the most numerous. Unlike some people in China who would attack the Chinese from time to time, most of the Chinese in the United States were very united. Of course, there were some regional differences, like the North and the South. However, under the oppression of the black and white forces, the Chinese knew that they were intimately interdependent. Some people in China thought that since these people had become American citizens, they were no longer the people of the imperial court. Indeed, these people were not the imperial court's people now, but they were all descendants of the Yellow Emperor. Since they were from the same clan, they preferred to take care of business with Chinese people. For example, Zhang Dihai's Haishang supermarket was not qualified to be compared with Walmart and other large supermarkets in terms of variety and price. However, their business had always been good. Because compared to those large supermarkets, the Chinese people were more used to buying things here. Just like today, as soon as Mr. Zhang's family opened their store in Los Angeles, some elderly people and housewives walked into the supermarket with baskets in their hands to pick out the fresh vegetables they needed today. However, after walking in, almost everyone saw a newly opened area. Jean Xian's display cabinet was much smaller than other places. At the same time, it was also much more luxurious. When people walked into the shop, they would see it. This made many people curious and walked over to take a look. In the end, they found that it was selling beef. The Haishang supermarket originally sold beef, and the price was about the same as Walmart. However, when they saw the beef on this day, many of them laughed or bit their tongues. In any case, most of them walked away silently. Because in their opinion, this store was crazy, because the price of the beef was really a bit too much. Old Lou, is your store going to close down? Doing such a one-off business? What kind of beef is this? You can ascend to immortality after eating it. Why is it so expensive? Of course, not everyone was silent. Among them, there was a man who spoke Shu Mandarin. He picked up a piece of beef that weighed about 1 pound and said with a mocking expression. The price of the beef at this time was indeed a bit too much. A pound of beef was $450. Old Zhang, don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. Look at that beef, is it ordinary beef? Hearing his words, a middle-aged man behind the counter with a store manager logo on his chest couldn't help but speak. His eyes were full of contempt. Isn't it just beef? Why? Can I really ascend to immortality after eating it? Hearing old Lu's words, the man called Old Zhang couldn't help but hesitate. He carefully looked at it and found that it was indeed just beef, nothing special. I said you don't understand, and you really don't understand. Aren't you a restaurant owner? This is the best kind of beef in the special grade A beef. Do you know the Japanese Wagyu? The best Wagyu is grade 5A, and this is grade 5A. This is the best beef that can be sold in the world at present. Hearing his words, Lu couldn't help showing off. He didn't expect that when he heard the price of the meat yesterday, he was actually more shocked than the others. The price was crazy. However, the boss of Hai Shang supermarket, Zhang Dihai, gave each store 5 caddies of meat for them to eat in order to dispel these people's concerns. Last night, they had eaten the beef. The beef made with their terrible skills almost made them swallow their tongues. Since then, old Lu had been the most loyal supporter of this kind of beef. Unfortunately, this kind of beef was really not something he could afford to eat. Is it that good? No matter how good the beef is, isn't it still beef? Although he was a little confused by old Lu's mysterious idea, old Zhang was still very stubborn. He looked at the piece of beef curiously. Indeed, the layout of the marbled pattern on the beef was very beautiful, but this thing was not that amazing after it was made. It was not that magical. How about this, if you want to buy it, I'll give you a 20% discount, but it's only 1 piece. Go back and have a good taste. If it's not good, come and find me. I'll give you a refund. Looking at old Zhang, old Lu smiled. He knew that old Zhang was the owner of a famous Sichuan restaurant nearby. In the world, wherever there were Chinese people, there would be Chinese restaurants. Although these restaurants had been modified to cater to the local taste, they were completely unrecognizable. However, there were also some families who specialized in some traditional Huaxia dishes, specially prepared for Huaxia people and foreigners who liked to eat this kind of food. Lu's family opened such a Sichuan restaurant. According to legend, old Lu's ancestor was once a special chef. However, everyone knew that although Sichuan cuisine was popular all over the country, there was no Sichuan cuisine in the Manchu Han imperial banquet. Not even a single dish. Therefore, the special chef of Sichuan cuisine didn't have a good life during the late Qing dynasty. Later, his family came to the United States and opened a restaurant here. There was no need to talk about his skills. Therefore, after so many years of operation, this restaurant had become one of the largest restaurants in Huaxia City. Many Huaxia people would choose to eat here. Naturally, the price of the food here was not ordinary. Although he had made a lot of money and did not lack that money, he was still a little tempted by the $450 a pound of beef. Now that he heard old Lu's words, he hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth. Out of his trust in old Lu, as well as the solemn look on his face, old Zhang bought a piece and prepared to try it himself. After buying the beef and other ingredients, he returned to the kitchen. It was still early in the morning. The land of Sichuan was known as the most leisurely place. The people here liked to sleep in, drink tea, and play mahjong. Most of the people in his restaurant were also from Sichuan, especially the kitchen. People from other places could not make the unique spicy food of that place. When he arrived at the kitchen, Zhang began to prepare. This pound of beef was more than 9 taels. At most, he could make 2 dishes. He was going to make a cold dish and a hot dish. For the cold dish, he was going to make husband and wife lung slice, and for the hot dish, he was going to make steamed beef. Although he knew that the best beef was eaten raw and made into steak, he always felt that no matter what the dish was, the original taste of the Chinese cuisine could be maximized. To put it simply, if he was willing, who could stop him? Husband and wife lung slice was a snack developed in Sichuan at the end of the Qing dynasty. The main ingredient was naturally not beef. The main ingredients were beef tongue, beef heart, tripe, and scalp. But nowadays, the beef was more expensive than the beef. In addition, it was not easy to clean up, so basically, the husband and wife lung slice was made with beef. First, the beef was cut into thin slices, then seasoned with spices, salt, and pepper, a specialty of Sichuan, and braised it. After the fierce fire was brought to a boil, he turned the fire to a small one and stewed the meat. Then, he took it out to dry. After that, he put some celery and cooked peanuts together. Then, he added in the marinade, soybean oil, MSG, huasiang noodles, chili noodles, and sesame seeds. It was not too difficult and was a very delicious cold dish. As for steamed beef, it was not too difficult. After removing the tendons, cut the beef into slices, put in Pechin bean strips, soy sauce, vegetable oil, soy sauce, ginger, rice, and glutinous rice. After steaming it over a strong fire for 30 minutes, it was ready to eat. Of course, some chili powder, pepper powder, chopped green onions, garlic, and coriander could also be added. These two dishes were very home-cooked dishes. For old Zhang, he could cook these two dishes well with his eyes closed. However, he was very careful today because his ingredients were too expensive. When he took the beef out of the box, he was stunned for a moment. Usually, good beef would have some rank odor on it. But this beef, other than some fragrance, there was almost no rank odor. Then, when he cut it, he realized that the beef did not have any tendons at all. There was not even the slightest bit of tendons. However, the meat was very firm, which surprised him. It seemed that there was a reason why this beef was so expensive. Then, he prepared to make the husband and wife lung slice first because it would take some time to dry it. However, when he put the beef and the seasoning into the big pot, the flavor of the seasoning would usually overpower the beef. But this time, the flavor of the beef suddenly rushed into his nose. He suddenly understood that with this smell, the price of this piece of beef was not considered expensive. And when he finished cooking the two dishes and took them out to enjoy, his eyes suddenly lit up. The next day, when old Lu opened the door of his shop, he found old Zhang standing in front of his shop with bloodshot eyes. "What's the situation? Did your wife chase you out?" Old Lu said in surprise when he saw old Zhang's appearance. However, old Zhang did not answer him as usual. Instead, he pushed him aside and ran to the area. In fact, he was not chased out by his wife. He had been standing here for half the night. He was waiting for that beef. Chapter 353. Boss. At this time, in a villa near Long Island in New York, a woman in an office lady's uniform ran in anxiously with a stack of papers in her hand. "Don't panic." Looking at her, a naked woman in black gauze pajamas in the living room of the villa couldn't help but speak softly. There were several other women beside this woman. These women were either black, white, or yellow-skinned, but they all had one thing in common, which was that their clothes were really simple. Some of their key parts were not covered by clothes. At this time, these women were like kittens, surrounding the woman in black gauze. One of them was feeding her wine, while the other was feeding her fruit. However, they were not using their hands, but their mouths. The other women were either sniffing her arms or legs. There were even two women who were licking the woman's legs. This scene really made people speechless. Seeing this scene, the office lady who ran and didn't care. Obviously, this wasn't the first time she had seen this scene. She stopped in front of the woman, took 2 deep breaths, and handed over the stack of papers. Seeing the papers, the woman waved her hand gently. The girls around her all left her side and stood in a row behind her, standing there respectfully. The woman took the stack of papers and looked at it. The more she looked, the wider the smile on her face. Hey, 80% of the sales in 3 days. It seems that my choice is really right. I don't have to worry about the sales of these beef. She put the stack of reports on the table and pulled a beauty behind her. The woman kissed her heavily. After a few minutes, she let go of her, who was faintly out of breath. Boss is really far-sighted. Should we kill the remaining 9,000 beef as soon as possible? Looking at the woman's appearance, the OL also smiled. Indeed, this time, the company made a lot of money. The remaining? Don't worry. Let them wait. Do you know why the fruit company is so popular? Hearing the OL's words, the woman spoke unhurriedly with a different light in her eyes. Hunger marketing. Looking at the woman's expression, the office lady understood and said with a smile. Yes, so let them wait. Seeing that the office lady understood, the woman smiled. As for the other side, in a villa in Boston, an old man also saw a report similar to the previous one, but the difference was that this report said that all the beef he imported had been sold out. Dad, our profit in 3 days has reached more than 3 million. Sure enough, Dad's vision was right. In front of the old man, a man dressed in a suit and leather shoes said with a smile. After all, these cows were only 1/10 of the previous batch. If they killed all these cows, they would not only make 3 million this time, but also 30 million. 30 million. That would double his annual turnover. How could he not be tempted by it? Don't worry. If Walmart doesn't do anything, we won't do anything either. However, the old man did not agree to his proposal. The old man just shook his head and looked at the report in front of him. The middle-aged man thought for a while and understood. Yes, Dad, I understand. Looking at the old man, the middle-aged man smiled. His smile was quite gratified. Yes, at this time, these two people were not strangers. They were Pra Walton and Zhang Dihai, who had bought Jiang Hai's beef. Since Jiang Hai's beef went on the market 3 days ago, the response on the first day was really dull. However, on the second day, the sales directly soared more than twice, and 95% of them were repeat customers. Jiang Hai's beef was indeed much better than other ingredients in the world. Even if it was the best beef in Japan, Jiang Hai's beef would definitely crush it. First of all, in terms of appearance, there may not be much difference between the two, but whether it's in terms of taste, texture, or nutrition, Jiang Hai's beef won't have any problem crushing Wagyu. This is because the aura contained in the beef not only makes the beef taste excellent, but most importantly, it's also good for people's health. Such a good thing almost became the first thing in the upper class almost as soon as it was launched. In this world, there were many people who did not lack money, so these people pursued delicious and healthy food. Now, these two things were perfectly combined in Jiang Hai's beef. Naturally, it was the best choice. On the first day, maybe most of the people just bought one piece of beef with an attitude of trying, but many people directly went back to buy it in the afternoon. There were also some people who waited until the next day to buy it. In the end, they found that the original supply was not as much as it was at the beginning. This made these people more anxious. For example, old Zhang and the others in Los Angeles directly bought more than 10 pieces at one time. These pieces of beef were kept for themselves or given away. When the people who gave away the beef saw that it was new, they would eat it on the same day. After eating it, they would basically call and ask where the beef was bought. In this way, after 3 days, the original stock of the Xishang supermarket was all sold out. The other people who came because of the news only got the answer at the stock was no longer in stock. As for Walmart, although the stock was not completely sold out, 80% of its beef was sold. Those who did not buy it and those who bought it left their phone numbers to make an appointment for the next batch of beef. Even some Western restaurants saw the business opportunity and wanted to buy the beef. Unfortunately, Jiang Hai's beef was not enough to sell to the upper class, let alone to these Western restaurants. Although these people were anxious, they could do nothing about it. Even this news was passed to Chi Li, who had been paying attention to Jiang Hai's beef. At this time, Qi Li's restaurants were almost renovated. In her opinion, they should be able to open in early June. However, she was very worried that Jiang Hai's beef would be gone by then. She specially called Jiang Hai and told Jiang Hai that he must keep his 1,000 cows. Of course, she, who was originally strong, was much weaker this time because she knew that Jiang Hai was no longer the man she needed to lower her head to see. The current Jiang Hai, purely in terms of money, was a man she needed to raise her head to see. In 3 days, Jiang Hai's beef became famous in the upper class. In an instant, it became a wildfire in the upper class. While some people were interested in Jiang Hai's beef, some people were interested in Jiang Hai. Among these interests, there were some that had good intentions. Of course, there were also some that had bad intentions towards Jiang Hai. However, at this time, Jiang Hai did not know about these. After selling 2 batches of beef, Jiang Hai was also paying attention to the price of beef and the reaction of the market. However, during the day, he was more with Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqian. These 2 people seemed to have gotten used to Jiang Hai's existence recently. Every day, the 3 of them would fight together. Perhaps they had the idea of smashing a broken jar, so whether it was Feng Yunqian or Ai Xiaoxi, they were becoming more and more open. Their fighting positions were also gradually changing. From the bed in the room to the floor, then to the bathroom, the kitchen, the corridor, the stairs, and then gradually changed from indoors to outdoors. The periphery of the forest, the hangar of the airplane, the beach by the sea, behind the reef. However, the place where most of the fighting took place was still Jiang Hai's car. At this time, the 3 of them had just completed a big battle in the car. It was said that the land that could not be plowed was only the exhausted cows. Jiang Hai now felt that this sentence was not wrong. Even with his physical fitness, which was twice the limit of a human, he felt that he was about to be overwhelmed. As for Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqian, these days, they were becoming more and more radiant. Their skin was getting better and better, and they were becoming more and more beautiful. They were eating food that contained spiritual energy, enjoying the nourishment of love, and Jiang Hai's additional subsidies. Regardless of whether it was in terms of temperament or figure, these 2 girls had made a qualitative leap. If one was not very familiar with the 2 girls, it would be very difficult to connect them to the 2 girls who had just arrived here a few days ago. At this time, Feng Yunqian and Ai Xiaoxi were lying on Jiang Hai's left and right. The sweat on their bodies had already wet their hair, which was hanging naturally by the side. Their eyes were closed, and there was a trace of a smile on their faces. Okay, we should go back. It's getting late. After sending you guys back, I still have to go fishing for seafood. What do you want to eat tonight? Lobster, wrapped fish, prawns or sea cucumber, or something else? After about half an hour, when the 3 of them were done being intimate, Jiang Hai also sat up, his hands naturally resting on the long legs of the 2 women beside him, and asked with a smile. I want to eat wrapped fish. As soon as she heard Jiang Hai mention food, Ai Xiaoxi was the first to wake up, and raised her hand and said, I want to eat too. You can get a few more. Hearing her words, Feng Yunqian also said with a smile. Okay, no problem. For the domestic market, wrapped fish is a good thing, but for Jiang Hai, this kind of thing should be something he has plenty of. I really don't want this kind of life to end. Hearing Jiang Hai's straightforward words, Ai Xiaoxi sighed and said regretfully. If you don't want to leave, then stay here. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. He really wanted them to stay. Chapter 354. That won't do. We agreed that we will go back. As for your place, when the tourism project is done, we will consider it again. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunqian and Ai Lanshi were slightly moved, but soon Feng Yunqian rejected Jiang Hai's words and said with a smile. To be honest, in the beginning, Feng Yunqian didn't think about falling in love with Jiang Hai, or falling in love with Jiang Hai's life. After all, in her opinion, men are unreliable. She came to Jiang Hai for survival. But after getting along with him for a few days, she found that Jiang Hai was really a good man. Although it wasn't love, she really liked Jiang Hai. She liked this man, she liked this man's attitude, she liked this man's sensibility, she liked this man's life, and most importantly, she liked this manner, and of course, this man's money. Jiang Hai seemed to be the most perfect lover in the world, at least in her opinion. However, the unreliable thoughts of the man buried deep in her heart did not allow her to fall so quickly. As for Ai Xiaoxi, she was destined not to stay here because she had to go back to take care of her family. If she was really willing to be someone else's lover, she wouldn't have to do this job. Now, she was accompanying Jiang Hai. First, it was because of work. Second, it was because she was willing to do so. This was a beautiful dream, and she should wake up when she returned to China. Looking at the two determined women in front of him, Jiang Hai also knew that he couldn't persuade them. So, except for smiling and nodding, he had nothing to say. For a while, there was only the sound of clothes being put on in the car. Just when the atmosphere between the three was a little awkward, Jiang Hai's cell phone couldn't help but ring. Glancing at the caller, it was none other than Edouard Anderson. Jiang Hai also picked it up. "Hello, Ai Dehua, is the boat ready? I'm going to dig some seafood back to eat in a while." Picking up the phone, Jiang Hai said. "The boat has been prepared for a long time, but boss, your plan to dig seafood to eat may have to be pushed back because your yacht is here." Hearing what Ai Dehua said, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. At this time, Feng Yunshin and Ai Xiaoxi who were beside Jiang Hai were also stunned. Yes, the three of them had forgotten about the yacht. Although Jiang Hai wasn't a hero, he had completely forgotten about it for the past few days. Now that he heard that the yacht was here, he looked at Feng Yunshin and Ai Xiaoxi. The two girls were stunned. When they had first arrived, Jiang Hai had told them that he had a yacht. However, they had been busy filming and living with Jiang Hai, so they had forgotten about it. Now that they heard about a yacht, they were excited. "Do you want to see it?" Looking at the twinkling eyes of the two women, Jiang Hai asked with a smile. "Of course." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshin said immediately, and Ai Xiaoxi also looked at Jiang Hai with hope. For such a small proposal, Jiang Hai naturally didn't care. After the three of them put on their clothes, Jiang Hai also got into the driver's seat, stepped on the accelerator, and rushed in the direction of the dock. Before they arrived at the dock, Jiang Hai saw his yacht in the distance. The yacht that earned him more than 1 billion yuan. When Jiang Hai's car arrived at the dock, the yacht was almost there. Looking at the angular and beautiful yacht in front of them, the fishermen on the dock couldn't help but open their mouths wide. Although this boat is not as big as Jiang Hai's fishing boat, the difference between a yacht and a fishing boat is still very big. At least when they look side by side, everyone knows that this yacht is definitely much better than a fishing boat. "Boss, your yacht is so beautiful." Even Ai Dehua, a person who has seen many storms and waves, couldn't help but raise his finger to Jiang Hai and said with a serious face. Jiang Hai heard this and smiled. "Can we go up and have a look?" Pulling the corner of Jiang Hai's clothes, Ai Xiaoxi saw a yacht for the first time, and such a big one at that. She whispered to Jiang Hai, her eyes were full of hope. "Of course, let's check it in a while, and then tomorrow we will go out and have fun together." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled. This is indeed not a difficult thing. And hearing Jiang Hai agree to her request so easily, Ai Xiaoxi's face was also full of happiness. If Jiang Hai is really her boyfriend, how good would that be? Just as they were chatting here, the yacht slowly approached the dock. As the yacht was tied up, a few people came down from the yacht. These people were the ones who delivered the yacht. After sailing for so long, these people also looked tired. Jiang Hai was not stingy. First, he went up to the yacht with Ai Dehua and the others to check it. After making sure that there were no problems with the instruments, household appliances, the hull, and so on, Jiang Hai signed the receipt and at the same time took out $1,000 as a tip for these people. It was inevitable for these people to receive tips, but they didn't expect Jiang Hai to be so generous. There were a total of 4 people, $1,000, a total of $250 each. Although this week's sailing was very tiring, but the tiredness disappeared. Then Jiang Hai asked Marlon Rupert to take a helicopter to send them to a hotel in town for the night. The money for the night was also paid for by Jiang Hai, but these people had nothing to do with Jiang Hai tomorrow. Whether they went to Boston and took a plane back or something else, it had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. At this time, Jiang Hai was on the yacht with Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqian. This was the first time the 2 girls had boarded a yacht. Moreover, it was such a big yacht. To be honest, Jiang Hai found it hard to understand the excitement in their hearts. They were curious about everything, touching everything. They even studied the sofa for a long time. Looking at their appearance, Jiang Hai also knew that they wouldn't be able to leave for a while. So Jiang Hai deliberately sailed the boat out to play with Big Fool and his wife in the sea. After digging a lot of bao, they returned. At this time, although the 2 girls were hungry, they did not want to leave. If they did not see Jiang Hai come back with so many bao, they would have slept on the yacht tonight. But Jiang Hai was not destined to let them sleep on the yacht tonight, because the yacht just arrived today, so not only did it need to be repaired, but it also needed to be disinfected. After giving these to Ai Dehua, Jiang Hai took them home. Abalone, not sure if they could be found, was something Jiang Hai said before. It was mainly distributed in the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean. There were not many of them, so Americans and Europeans did not have the habit of eating them. At Jiang Hai's place, the number of abalone was much less than lobsters. But to be exact, that was in the past. Since Jiang Hai came, he had some special intentions to cultivate bao. Of course, he did not buy the seedlings of bao. Instead, he infused some idle spiritual energy into the bigger bao. Originally, Jiang Hai had forgotten about this matter. But after the beginning of spring, Jiang Hai discovered that the number of abalones he caught at the coral reef had increased significantly. The abalones on Jiang Hai's side belonged to the web abalone category. Abalones were mainly divided into imported and domestic abalones. Imported abalone was mainly divided into Australia and Japan. Australia's abalone with green edges, black edges, and net abalone were quite good. The best abalone in Japan was net abalone, followed by Ji Pin and Mawa. The worst abalone should be from the Middle East. The abalone in Jiang Hai's place was a type of net abalone from Australia and Japan. It could grow very big. The few abalone that Jiang Hai infused spiritual energy in the beginning had almost grown to 1 caddy. Just thinking about 1 caddy of bao was enough to make one panic. But Jiang Hai also treated those abalone as seeds. He would not touch them easily. He only dug the smaller ones at the side. But even if Jiang Hai dug a relatively small one, it was still at least 6 taels in weight. The grade of abalone was calculated by the head. 1 caddy was 605 grams. There were 2 heads, 3 heads, 5 heads, 10 heads, and so on. Jiang Hai's baoyu weighed 6 taels, and the 2 ends of the baoyu weighed 1 majin. It was a genuine 2-headed abalone. Tonight, Jiang Hai dug 20 of them. Since they liked to eat, then they would eat. Other things, Jiang Hai did not have much, but there were many delicious things. But that night, Feng Yunqian and Ai Xiaoxi's thoughts were clearly not on these bao. Although the bao was also delicious, to be honest, when they thought of going to the yacht to play yesterday, they were very excited. At night, naturally, they could not sleep. But for those who could not sleep, they still had an entertainment project to play, which was to fight with Jiang Hai. In the end, Jiang Hai did not remember when he fell asleep. He only remembered that he did not have good dreams for the whole night. This also caused some problems in his sleep quality. But fortunately, Jiang Hai's physical fitness was there. He was still in good spirits the next day. Although the yacht itself did not require much control, Jiang Hai still felt that it was more reliable to bring along one more person. If he brought along Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi, these two people did not know how to sail and did not know anything. It would be troublesome. Thus, Jiang Hai thought of Aphrodite. To be honest, after that night, Jiang Hai did not know what to do with Aphrodite. But now that he thought of who to bring along, the first person he thought of was still her. Thus, Jiang Hai called her. When Aphrodite heard that Jiang Hai wanted to bring her out to sea, she naturally did not say anything. She was already in place early the next morning. When everyone was in place, Jiang Hai also gave the order. The group of 4 started the yacht and headed for the open sea. Chapter 355. Yes, make her look more charming. Her hands aren't in the way. Jiang Hai, help her with it. While fiddling with the camera, Feng Yunchen said to Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai didn't care about it. He went straight up and helped Ai Xiaoxi fix her hair, blocking the part that should be blocked. He didn't want Ai Xiaoxi to accidentally leak it. Today's weather is really good. After Jiang Hai left, Aphrodite, who had been standing next to them, said with narrowed eyes. Today's weather was really good. There was almost no wind, an endless sea, and an endless blue sky. There were no clouds in the sky except for the sun, so the whole world seemed to be blue at this time. It's just that in this blue world, Jiang Hai's small boat has appeared. After Jiang Hai's yacht arrived at his dock yesterday, Edward Anderson and the others checked it at night. After disinfecting the inside and outside of the cabin, Jiang Hai took Feng Yunchen, Ai Xiaoxi, and Aphrodite out to have fun. After getting on the boat, the 2 girls naturally had to work. However, in the past, they still needed Jiang Hai to hold the light shield for them. Today, they didn't need it because the sun was really too bright. The sun was so dazzling that they didn't need to block the light on their faces. Therefore, Jiang Hai only became a single assistant, and he only went up to help. After so many days of shooting, Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi had actually gotten used to Jiang Hai's presence. When they were shooting, their seductive actions were directed at Jiang Hai, which made Jiang Hai a little unbearable. If it was a normal day, Jiang Hai could only endure it and wait until the shooting was over, but today was different. Huh? Seeing that there was something wrong with Jiang Hai's loose beach pants, Aphrodite took the initiative to squat down with a smile. Although she and Jiang Hai had only done it once, she didn't feel shy and directly helped Jiang Hai solve the problem. Listening to the sound of water and the visual impact, Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi, who were filming, could not help but feel speechless. Sometimes, women were actually quite naughty, especially when they were used to tasting sweetness. Looking at Aphra and Jiang Hai, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunchen couldn't help but look at them. Hey, it's not good for you to be like this, you know? We're still filming. Looking at Jiang Hai and Aphra, Feng Yunchen put her hands on her waist and said with a face full of displeasure. They are disturbing their filming too much. Are you guys coming? Then I'll leave it to you. I just hope that when the boss needs help, someone can help him at any time. As for who the person is, I don't care. Hearing Feng Yunchen's words, Aphra couldn't help but raise her head and smiled at the 2 girls, then said to them. Hearing Aphra's unreserved words, the 2 girls couldn't help but raise their middle fingers. Crazy, if you want to do it, go to the cabin, it's not like there are no rooms. Looking at the 2 girls, Feng Yunchen said. It's not as comfortable as here, I'm almost done, come on. After Aphra replied softly, she took the initiative to lie down on the side of the boat and said to Jiang Hai. And Jiang Hai also knew that this was not the time to be polite, so he immediately blew the bugle call. Really? Listening to Aphrodite's voice, Feng Yunchen's face turned red as if it was on fire even though he didn't want to look. As for Ai Xiaoxi, her legs were a little weak, but this shooting plan couldn't be disrupted. The battle with Jiang Hai will last 2 to 3 hours, and by that time, the best sunlight will have passed, so they must take the photos at this time. So the two girls can only rely on their willpower to take the next photos. An hour has passed since the photos were taken. And at this time, Afra also reached the peak for the 4th time, with Jiang Hai's funds, lying on the deck with satisfaction. It's our turn. Seeing Afra fall down, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi on the other side also prepared to charge. Wow, I'm so happy, I feel as if I'm in heaven. Look, there's a city on the horizon, that's heaven, huh? How can I see heaven? Aphrodite, who was lying on the ground, slowly murmured softly as she recalled the feeling just now. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and said with some surprise. Hearing her words, the 3 people who were fighting at this time couldn't help but raise their heads. Sure enough, in their eyes, there is a city in the distant sky. Seeing this, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan instantly lost interest and looked at the sky with surprise. As for Jiang Hai, he also unconsciously sped up, and after 10 minutes, the funds were injected. Then he lay on the ground with Ai Xiaoxi in his arms and looked at the city on the horizon. That's an illusion, the legendary mirage. Looking at the buildings in the distance, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan and the others on the other side all propped up their bodies and pointed at the city on the horizon with a look of surprise. This is a mirage, wow, this is the first time I've seen it. In fact, it's not only them, even Afra saw it for the first time, but Jiang Hai has seen it many times. Yeah, it's amazing, right? If you don't want to leave, you can see it whenever you want. Looking at Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. When he saw it for the first time, he was also shocked. But for Edward Anderson and the others, they are already used to such a scene. After telling Jiang Hai about it, Jiang Hai also felt very curious. But later, he got used to it and didn't care about it. Humph. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan couldn't help but roll their eyes at him, then picked up the camera and took pictures. For them, it's really amazing to see this thing. Didn't they say that this thing was formed by the breath of a big mussel under the sea? He doesn't know who these people are. But it doesn't mean that he will just let it go. He immediately changed another channel to the Coast Guard. Jiang Hai is a big customer here. These people must ensure his safety. At the same time, he called Ai Dehua and told him that something may happen here. Then he started the engine and prepared to stall the boat. No matter what the people on the boat want to do, as long as they can't catch Jiang Hai now, then when the Coast Guard and Ai Dehua arrive, the people on the boat will be finished. After all, this is his private waters. This is just like Jiang Hai's back garden. Now that they broke in and ignored the warning, it can be determined that these people are a threat to him. Jiang Hai will never be kind to people who are a threat. Chapter 356. Soren, what should we do? That boat is sailing. In fact, not only Jiang Hai was nervous at this time, but the people on the boat were even more nervous. Seeing Jiang Hai's boat sailing, a person in the boat's cabin shouted nervously. I know, I'm not blind. Hearing the words of the person next to him, a bearded man driving the boat said with a fierce face. After saying that, he also took a look at his cabin. He only saw that at this time, the cabin of this boat, which was only about 10 meters long, was crowded with about 50 or 60 people. These people were men and women, old and young. Their clothes were very dirty and messy. The whole cabin was filled with a sour smell. When these people saw the bearded man looking at them, many of them subconsciously shrank back. The children directly nestled in the arms of their relatives and looked at the bearded man in horror. Hey, bitch, you go and find a way to stop that boat. The bearded man was very satisfied with the gazes of these people at this time. Then he turned his head and looked at a woman who had been sitting in the corner. And this bearded man who was feared by everyone, when he saw this woman, his eyes were a bit evasive. This woman looked like a European. She had white skin and long blonde hair. Looking at her appearance, she was about 25 or 26 years old. Her hair was combed into a ponytail. Her figure was quite good. She was wrapped in a beige military uniform. In addition to a pistol hanging by her leg, there were also 2 handguns. At this time, she was sitting there calmly. Only when she heard the bearded man's words did she look at him. "Why should I help you?" The woman glanced at the bearded man called Sauron and said. Her English was a bit strange, but no one dared to laugh at this time. Everyone felt that when she spoke, the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop a few degrees for no reason, and the children snuggled closer into their parents' arms. "You are not helping me, you are helping yourself and these people. I don't need to say more about what you are doing. If you are discovered by the US government, you will have to go back to where you came from." Looking at the woman, the bearded man said with a serious face. Hearing the bearded man's words, the woman lowered her head. After thinking for a while, she stood up again, took out a rope from the cabin next to her, and hung it on her shoulder. Seeing the woman standing up and picking up the rope, the bearded man couldn't help laughing. He immediately returned to the steering room and drove the boat towards Jiang Hai, who was about to dodge. At this time, Jiang Hai saw the other party's actions and couldn't help but frown because he was already sure that these guys were coming for him. Although his boat was not big, it was not small either. This medium-sized yacht was not like the other party's boat, which could turn freely. Although he was already doing it, the speed of turning was relatively slow. At this time, the small boat also ran over quickly. The metal bow of the boat actually made contact with Jiang Hai's side boat. In an instant, a piercing sound of metal was heard. "Who is it? Hurry up and get in the room." Listening to the piercing sound of friction, Jiang Hai was also angry. His yacht was not scratched from Miami to Boston. Now it was scratched, and it seemed that the other party was coming for him. How could Jiang Hai just let it go? After yelling at the 3 women around him, Jiang Hai tilted the bow of the boat. The boat that was originally going to dodge went straight to the boat next to it. When the 3 women heard Jiang Hai's words, they knew that now was not the time to be entangled. They immediately ran into Jiang Hai's room. As soon as they ran in, Jiang Hai's boat had a close contact with the other party's boat. Jiang Hai's boat was not big, but it cost Jiang Hai more than 5 million yuan. In addition to the money for the interior and brand, the materials used for the boat itself were naturally the best. The metal, fiberglass, and the like were the best. It was far from being comparable to this small boat. When Jiang Hai hit back, the boat was like a small thin man pushed away by a fat man. It shook violently and dodged to the side. At this time, the people in the cabin had no other choice but to scream and grab everything around them. As for Soren in the steering room, he was also shocked with a cold sweat. At the same time, he also scolded in his heart, "These Americans really don't care about the consequences when they do things. If this was in Europe, no one would dare to do this." When he was thinking about it, he did not consider what he did just now. But to his relief, in the 2 contacts just now, the damn bitch had hooked her rope to the string of Jiang Hai's yacht. At this time, she was climbing up quickly. I didn't expect this guy to be useful. Looking at the woman who was about to climb to the top, Soren could not help but smile. The boat no longer touched Jiang Hai's boat, but followed it unhurriedly. Although Jiang Hai's boat stirred up waves and made the boat shake back and forth, Soren did not care and still followed it closely. This was because he would not be wrong. This was not an ordinary boat. This was a yacht. The person who had the ability to buy such a boat was destined to not be an ordinary person. Since he encountered such a person, it was not his style to not make some trouble. Feeling that the boat was following him unhurriedly, when Jiang Hai wanted to hit it, it would stay away. If he did not hit it, it would come back. This made Jiang Hai a little speechless. Obviously, the pilot of this boat was much better than him. I don't believe that I can't deal with you. Seeing that his boat could not do anything to the other party, Jiang Hai was ready to use his golden finger. After setting the autopilot, Jiang Hai quickly ran out of the cockpit and went to the deck. He picked up a piece of beef infused with spirit energy and threw it into the sea. He was calling for the big idiot. However, the moment his beef was thrown into the sea, Jiang Hai's sixth sense told him that he was trapped. In an instant, Jiang Hai dodged and fell back. The moment he fell, a gunshot rang out. Bang! Jiang Hai's strong dynamic vision saw a bullet fly in front of him and hit his deck. If he did not dodge, the bullet would have drilled into his leg. Who the F***ck? Jiang Hai fell to the ground and rolled to the side in an instant. However, at the same time, he also looked in the direction of the bullet. He saw a woman with a gun at a glance. Needless to say, the bullet was fired by her. He actually dodged it. Humph. Seeing that Jiang Hai actually dodged her bullet, the woman holding the gun was a little stunned, but she didn't give up. She knew that guns were not banned in the United States. If this man also went to take a gun, although she was confident that she could win the final victory, she was still prepared to take advantage of the situation to pursue and attack. With the gun in her hand, she chased in the direction Jiang Hai dodged in a few steps. However, just as she turned the corner, she saw a huge swimming ring flying straight toward her chest. The swimming ring on the ship was different from the one in the swimming pool. This kind of swimming ring was thick, heavy, and big. If she was hit, even this woman would not feel good, so she could only dodge. At this time, it was impossible to dodge back to the corner, so she could only squat down. However, the moment she squatted down, a figure had already slid horizontally under the swimming ring. This person was no one else but Jiang Hai. The moment the woman dodged the swimming ring, Jiang Hai had already arrived in front of her. Jiang Hai kicked the woman's wrist heavily. In an instant, the pistol she was originally holding was kicked into the sea by Jiang Hai. However, the woman's reaction was not slow. She dropped the pistol and instantly hit Jiang Hai's most painful part with her elbow. If this hit, even if Jiang Hai did not die, he would be half crippled. Unfortunately, Jiang Hai's speed was much faster than her. His left foot instantly pushed against the wall next to him and directly dodged her blow. At the same time, he kicked at her. This woman wasn't bad either. Seeing that her elbow attack didn't work, she directly switched from her elbow to her hand. She propped herself up on the ground and did a handstand to avoid Jiang Hai's kick. F***ck. Looking at the other party's movements, Jiang Hai had to take back his leg. His body was still, and he stood up like a carp. I didn't expect you to have some skills. Tell me, who sent you? Looking at the other party's appearance, Jiang Hai moved gently. When it came to close combat, Jiang Hai was really not afraid of anyone. Although this woman seemed to have good combat power, Jiang Hai was confident that she would definitely not be able to beat him, even if she had a knife in her hand. Grim Reaper. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman didn't care. She just faintly answered Jiang Hai's question. She stepped on the ground with her right foot and instantly rushed toward Jiang Hai. The two knives almost instantly formed an X shape and slashed toward Jiang Hai's head. There was no doubt that if Jiang Hai was slashed, his head would really be separated from his body. However, Jiang Hai was not so easy to deal with. His body lay back, and at the same time, his right foot kicked directly toward the woman's breasts. This woman was not easy to provoke. At this time, she actually retracted her knives and wanted to cut off Jiang Hai's foot. However, Jiang Hai smiled lightly. The leg that was originally kicked out instantly swung, and the other leg directly kicked toward the woman. Although the woman's reaction was not slow, and she blocked Jiang Hai's leg with her hand, Jiang Hai's strength, hee. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.